So today, the Republican national headquarters in D.C. was locked down after what they say was a biological attack. Blood was sent to their headquarters, and of course, that's a serious issue. So they ended up having to lock things down. I don't know to what degree the blood may have been infected or contaminated, or who knows. But things are certainly getting spicy in this country. And we're kind of in this lull period waiting for the results till next week of what's going on with this Trump trial and where we're currently at. But we do have a bunch of news. 13 counties in Oregon have voted to secede and join Idaho. This is particularly interesting. We got another poll. You're going to love this one. 40% of Americans, according to Marist, think civil war is coming. And then more interestingly, Biden is not on the ballot in Ohio. I kind of feel like this is the biggest story because it's been something we've been tracking. And now they are saying it's too late. Biden will not be able to get on the ballot. They've not been able to get this rectified. What does that mean? Something weird is going on. Now there's political party members in the Democratic Party being like, no, we're going to get him on the ballot. Don't worry. And it's just like, no, they said it's over. So what does this mean that Biden isn't even on the ballot in Ohio? They don't care about these swing states? And then we got some pretty funny news. Vivek Ramaswamy bought part of BuzzFeed. Yeah. Oh, he bought part of BuzzFeed. That's right. Yeah, because, all right, he's going to turn it around. He's going to make some money. So we'll talk about all of this stuff. Before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com. Buy Cast Brew coffee. It's the best coffee you will ever have. Everyone agrees. At least that's what I've been told. We've got Appalachian Nights. That's everyone's favorite. But don't forget Stand Your Grounds. That's a good one, too. And Rise with Roberto Jr. If you like Appalachian Nights, you will like Stand Your Grounds. Similar flavor profile, but it is a medium roast, so it's got a little bit different. Also, head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us. Become a member to support our work directly because this show is made possible thanks in part to viewers like you. Without your support as members, we could not do what we do. And as a member, you'll get access to the Uncensored Call-In Show, which is Monday through Thursday at 10 p.m. And I just want to say we've got probably the biggest shows, a couple of the biggest shows we will ever do coming up in this next week. And it's made possible thanks to you guys as members. So I really would like to just say thank you all for being members, supporting us. When you become a member, you get access to the Discord server where you can hang out with like-minded individuals. They do pre-shows, they do after-shows, and then you as members call in and talk to us and our guests. It's great. So smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel. Share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Chase Geiser.
Hey, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name's Chase Geiser. I am the author of The Rise of American Populism with a foreword by Alex Jones. This is available for pre-order on Amazon, and it's the reason I reached out and asked to be here, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here again. I also host the Sunday night live show on InfoWars on Sunday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. I work for Alex Jones in Austin, Texas, every day. Again, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We got Elad hanging out.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Elad Eliyahu. I'm a reporter here at Timcast News. Chase, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. What's up, Hannah Claire?
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimla. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. It's pretty great. Hi, Serge.
Hello, Hannah Claire. Hey, dudes. Let's get into it, Tim.
Here's the big news from the Daily Mail. Republicans say they were victims of a biological attack after vials of blood were sent to RNC headquarters. The RNC said its headquarters in D.C. was targeted in a biological attack on Wednesday because of the blood. After a suspicious package was found in the building, they temporarily locked it down and a hazmat team was dispatched to the scene. He said, today, vials of blood were sent to RNC headquarters in D.C. We are thankful to law enforcement who responded quickly and ensured everyone's safety. That's what? How did they know it was blood? The lockdown has been cleared and staff has resumed their office duties because we remain unintimidated and undeterred in our efforts to elect President Trump to the White House. He added, this revolting attack comes on the heels of pro-Hamas protesters violently demonstrating on college campuses and deranged Biden supporters physically attacking our campaign volunteers for supporting President Trump. While Republicans fight to strengthen our economy, secure our southern border, and halt the violent crime in our communities, the fringe left is wreaking havoc, sowing fear, and lying to the public in a bad faith effort to divide Americans and sway an election. He says no matter what violent tactics Biden's extreme left supporters try next, the RNC would stand firm in our mission to deliver greater freedom and opportunity for all Americans, and we won't back down. Certainly lathering it on a bit thick there over getting a couple vials of blood, which is nasty and alarming, sure, but kind of making it seem like there was an assassination attempt on the president or something over this blood is, that story.
How mad do you think the DNC was when they found out their adrenochrome went to the wrong headquarters?
Yeah, I was going to say, some reporter is really in trouble right now. Or do you think they're just trying to lure some vampires to the RNC? They're like, here, guys, just go that way, hang out with the Republicans. I mean, it does seem a little hysterical. On the other hand, it could have been anything, and you don't really want random vials of blood showing up on
That's
your
weird.
doorstep.
Weird. Why would someone do that? Like, what is the thought process of sending blood to the RNC headquarters? Right?
It could just be any lunatic.
I mean, my
Right?
initial thought was like, you know how during Blinken's testimony yesterday, people were sitting there with like red paint on their hands for like
Yeah.
the blood on your hands thing. I wondered if it was a reference to something like that. But I haven't Googled to see if the RNC headquarters is next to like a Quest diagnostic. What if it really was just something delivered to the wrong place?
If they run a DNA test on it and find out who it is.
It'll be interesting to see if we find out who sent them these vials. We never found out who left the pipe bombs January 5th outside the DNC or RNC ever. So doesn't look like they care much about these two buildings, the security about either of these buildings. So
How much would you say that this is them just kind of hamming it up? Or like the RNC, it's like, it was a biological attack.
If it was going to be an attack, you would think it would be like anthrax or something that was actually deadly. I mean, who knows if these blood vials are even anything lethal? I mean, they were in vials. It's gross,
Yeah.
but what's
Right.
lethal about that? It's not like
2
dangerous.
vials of blood. And, and yeah, I don't know. People send all sorts of weird stuff to freak people out. Maybe, I guess the issue is we would need to know what accompanied the blood vials. Was there a letter saying like, here is the blood that has stained your hands or something like this? Or maybe it said something gross like diseased blood. I don't know.
Or it's like 2 lab for testing for cholesterol. Like, what if this really is just something that's sent the wrong
The
way,
collective
right?
works of Jane
There's
Austen.
some like FedEx driver who's having the worst day. He's being interrogated by the police, and he's like, I'm just really bad at my job.
It was a 23andMe, and they put the wrong
Yeah,
street.
but you
in
spit
DC.
in those.
I know, I'm kidding.
Somebody got it wrong.
You don't take 2 full vials of your blood to get your DNA.
They wanted
tested.
spit. I gave them blood.
some staffer accidentally got this mail to the wrong location, or were like, "Oh yeah, don't send it to my apartment, send it to my job instead." And they were like, "Oh wait."
And now they're having to sit there and like help write this press release. Like, yes, biological attack.
Well, I mean, with things like this, and with the rhetoric certainly escalating, what are we supposed to expect? What do you think, Chase, coming up in November? Obviously, the narrative is no one's going to believe the results of the election. And so with things like this, are we really looking at serious escalation of conflict? What happens after the election? Are Trump supporters going to be like, oh, Biden won, that's cool? Are Biden supporters going to be like, Trump won, all right?
What first comes to mind is the summer of love and what happened after George Floyd. I definitely foresee at minimum conflicts like that if Trump wins. I see people going to the streets, burning buildings down, Democratic district attorneys or attorney generals maybe not prosecuting these people. I definitely see violence and protests in the streets on that standpoint. Now, if Biden wins or whoever the Democratic candidate is, I'm still not 100% convinced that it's even going to be Biden. Weird things like him not being on the ballot in certain states and this DNC thing coming up and it's going to be remote now imply to me that there's something weird going on with that. But if Biden wins, I don't know if there's going to be violence or not. I find it hard to believe that there won't be some major upheaval reminiscent of J6, though I do have a tendency to believe J6 was in large catalyzed by feds.
I think that regardless of what happens in 2024, it's either going to be 28 or 32. Because, we talked a little bit about this before the show, and it's something that we had talked about last night on the show. The silent and boomer generations are a stabilizing force right now in the country. And one of the main reasons people say things like, oh, Twitter is not real life. It's only because older people are less likely to be using it. So the opinions and the fights you get into are typically among younger people. Then you walk outside and the businesses run by boomers don't behave these ways. But imagine that purple-haired, woke leftist on X who's arguing with you, turns 45, gets promoted to that job level. I mean, we talked about this with Bud Light. When the Bud Light thing happened, I said that my prediction is it's going to be some millennial woman who got promoted to marketing and decided to go this route.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get the Dylan Mulvaney beer can. When the older generation is out of politics, imagine what it's going to be like when AOC is Speaker of the House.
Right.
She's going to be like, we won't bring any bill to the floor that's Trump because Trump's a white supremacist. And then you're going to have someone being like, we should cut taxes. And they're going to be like, you're a Nazi.
Well, what do you think about this? I mean, traditionally we've thought, there's that old expression, if you're young and you're not a Democrat, you don't have a heart. And if you're old and you're not conservative, you don't have a brain. And regardless of the veracity of that expression, traditionally people, as they get older and have families, they become more conservative and have more conservative values. Do you think it's not going to happen this time with the way the demographic is? I mean, do you think that the leftists who are 25 now, when they're 35 or 45, aren't going to become more conservative in the way that maybe demographics have in the past?
Yeah, I think that saying is silly.
Yeah.
I understand why people say it. It's because of historical trends.
Right.
But what the real saying implies is when you're young, you are dumb, and then you realize how the world works.
Right.
So they say you have no heart. Oh, come on. It's like the implication is that your dad is strict with you because he has no heart. No, of course not. Your parents will be strict and tell you you are grounded. You can't go out after 10 because you were caught smoking pot with your friends because they care about you. So this idea that you've got Democrats trying to be the cool parent being like, we're going to legalize drugs. You can do whatever you want, abortion up to the point of birth or whatever. They don't care about you when they do that. That's not what someone who actually cares about you does. So this idea that if they say if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart, and if you're not conservative when you're old, you have no head. That's what they say. Yeah, no. The real issues of conservatism is if it's that saying is to imply when you get older, you become cold and callous but calculating, and when you're younger, you're loving but a little stupid.
Right.
No, the reality is, the conservative policies are based on helping people survive.
I agree with
and
you.
live better.
I'm just curious as to whether or not the left is going to shift to the right as it ages in this country.
So I would say no. There are people who are probably default liberal, as Breitbart would refer to them, who will go, oh, hey, whoa, I was voting for dumb things. And then they will start voting conservative. But these people aren't leftists as it is. They're normies.
Right.
The left, people like AOC, she's not going to become conservative. Nothing's going to change. She's already the kind of person where when there's a failure of government that she implements, she then blames the Republicans and corporations and then implements more failed policies. And that is the MO of the progressive leftist politician. So for people like her, these kids at these universities that are protesting, these camps, they don't actually care about Israel. Some do, I'm sure. Most of them don't. It's just the current, cause of the day. As Phil likes to point out, the cause is always the revolution. Those people aren't going to just change. They're not going to one day be like, oh man, wow, like we were out here with, we set up the People's Library. I should have charged money for that. That's not going to happen. For normies who vote Democrat because they don't pay attention, sure, those people are going to vote conservative. But for the most part, what you will see then is there's going to be a lot of people shifting to the right, and we're seeing it right now already. Younger people are moving towards Trump, but there still is a hyperpolarization. I think you'll get a larger percentage of people moving towards the Trump side of things, the MAGA side of things, because it's closer to what Americans want and expect. But the far left are being radicalized on the internet, and they're building a cult base. So they will have a fringe but large block. When boomers age out, retire, they are retiring, but then also just no longer vote because they've gone to the great beyond, as with the silent generation. The way I describe it is, imagine you have a sheet of paper and the older generation is up top and the younger generation is at the bottom, but we've split the younger generation and we're peeling the paper from the bottom up. Mm-hmm. As everyone ages and moves off the paper, you're splitting it, and eventually you end up with two separate sheets that don't go together anymore. So right now, the top of the page, it's 2 of 5 generations have political views that are similar, but the younger generations are further and further bifurcated.
Right.
What happens when that split goes all the way to the top? Now you have the United States of America, and then you have Wokistan.
Do you think the party identities were as big a deal for previous generations in, let's say 100 years ago? I feel like now one of the reasons someone wouldn't change, they'll as soon as they decide they're a progressive Democrat, they'll be one forever, is because they can't separate it from their own sense of identity.
Sure. Well, I think there have been studies that have been done that traditionally in America, parents would rather have their children marry someone of the same religion and a different political party persuasion. And that's shifted, I believe, over the course of the last several years to parents would actually rather have their children marry somebody who's a different religion as long as they're part of the same political persuasion. And so
It's a big mark of our identity now in the way that religion used to be.
Absolutely. So I do think that the political persuasion shift is much more difficult.
What about like Hellenistic religion? Maybe that goes a little too far.
Yeah. Oh, you worship Zeus?
Yeah.
But which way are you voting, though?
Yeah. As long as you don't vote for Tacitus.
Let's jump to the story from the Blaze. Biden is currently not slated to be on the Ohio ballot in November, and state lawmakers didn't bother to fix the issue. I mean, that's the story. The Democrats are claiming, don't worry, we'll figure it out. He'll get on the ballot. But the legislature of Ohio could not come to a decision as to how to solve the problem. You have to certify the nominees 90 days before Election Day to get on the ballot. But because of when they're doing the convention, it's 75 days. They don't have enough time to actually get him on the ballot. Now, they said, okay, let's just deal with this at the legislative level to get the sitting president on the ballot. And then they could not agree. They couldn't figure out how to actually do it. And some states, because of partisanship, Republicans were saying, no, we don't want to do that. Democrats were like, then do this. And they said, no. So there's no Biden in Ohio?
And that's a big swing state too, right?
It's a big swing state. It's an important one. Now, it is leaning Trump,
But
according to all the polls.
Why did the DNC, who sets their calendar for their convention, not think this one through? Like, they're blaming Ohio, but I don't understand why the DNC picked the dates that it did. Surely they went to all the states that were important and be like, when do we need to know? When do we need to submit that name? You tell me. Like, why are we blaming the state lawmakers in Ohio who had an established rule when the DNC schedules their convention? This doesn't make sense to me.
It was a choice. Something is weird. Something weird is going on. I don't know.
Doesn't it seem odd that the DNC would pick a date that's after an important swing state can put Biden on the ballot?
They don't care.
That's what it seems like.
I'm sorry. Like, is this indicative of a shadow campaign where Democrats are so confident they're going to win they don't need Ohio?
Oh,
Or
man,
Biden,
that's so
apparently.
reckless. That's so reckless. Well, it's weird too because Gavin Newsom has been in the news the last week or couple of weeks, I've noticed, talking about some autobiography that he's apparently been working on for 4 years.
But he's
if he comes out with a book, though, do you think they're going to try to slide him in, or is that just too much of a stretch?
Maybe, but he's just like a leftist Romney. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He doesn't.
He can put a
muster.
sentence together, though.
Yeah, but I suppose it's fair to say
He does look like Romney.
it's like a leftist Romney.
Pat Bateman and Romney had a baby.
Yeah.
Server boy Romney.
If they're going shadow campaign route, universal mail-in votes and ballot harvesting, they don't care if it's Biden or Newsom.
Right,
So
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. And I suppose the issue is maybe they don't care if Biden's on the ballot because they're ballot harvesting and they'll just get 5 million write-ins or something.
All in the same exact font.
It's with the same pen. Yeah. One old man.
Did you use papyrus?
One guy walks
Were
out
you
of
watching Avatar?
one guy walks out of a nursing home and he's got one massive right forearm and a pen in his hand. It's like, I have been signing for 3 months.
I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think they're going to make an exception for Joe Biden, and in a few weeks, this won't be a story.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, that's where I think this is going.
That's reasonable.
Otherwise, they'll say, oh, the Ohio Republicans are obstructing democracy by taking the sitting president off of the ballot there.
After they tried to take Trump off the ballot?
Okay, but maybe then the Republicans say the Democrats pulled strings to cheat in the rules to get Biden listed when they screwed it up.
Totally. Also, it would screw Democrats down ballot, which even if Joe Biden, I don't think he's really in play for Ohio, but down ballot is where it would matter. And no, they're going to give him a workaround now. I believe. We'll see.
I agree, but understand that means Republicans then say Democrats broke the rules, changed the rules, and then put their guy on even though it broke the law.
Yeah, absolutely.
This could open the door if Biden wins Ohio for massive lawsuits to say that they cheated and they altered the forms outside of the rules of the state, of the laws of the state.
Hopefully, we'll give the RFK Jr. campaign more lawsuits and things to complain
Why
about
did
too.
they schedule
it so
I know they're
late?
trying to keep him
think
off
it's-
ballots
Hold
across
on,
the
hold on.
country.
No, why are you ragging on RFK? You know
No,
we're
RFK
not talking
Jr.,
about
hey.
him.
No, I think it really is going to reflect badly on the DNC, right? The DNC sets the date of their convention. So they
Yeah.
could say Ohio and their laws and whatever, but they picked the date that they did, which either means they don't care, they think they should have an exception to the rule, which shows incredible arrogance, or this is a consistent issue they've had. They've decided that they are changing how they're operating, and everyone must conform to the will. Remember, they changed their primary schedule. Instead of going with first in the nation, New Hampshire, they were like South Carolina.
And then Bernie won in 2016, and they just said no, Hillary won.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are probably a pocket. I don't know how many, but there are probably some. Think of like the Blue Dog Democrats, people who are still part of the party but aren't sort of necessarily progressive, who are looking at the party change and alter their rules constantly, who are like, what are you guys doing? You didn't catch this? There were Democrats in New Hampshire who were like, hey, we got to have a write-in campaign to make sure, because Biden wasn't even on the New Hampshire primary ballot during the time, because they were like, we don't care about New Hampshire. South Carolina, which, by the way, he won handily, even though he lost to New Hampshire. I mean, there's a reason they're doing what they're doing, but I think it separates the voters from the DNC as an organization.
So maybe there's like some 26-year-old and a couple of 20-year-old interns that are told by the DNC, like, you guys are going to be in charge of making sure the paperwork's in line so we can file in these states. And they're just sitting in the room with their feet up, like spinning in their office chairs, not paying attention, being like, I don't really care about Biden, do you?
I just think it's bizarre that you would want to have your convention 75 days before the general election. I mean, that is like no time.
Right?
And if
That's
Joe
what's
Biden
weird.
is
2
kept
months.
off of the ballot, then if he loses, they'll say that the Republicans
They
stole the
swap
election.
somebody out.
Exactly.
It gives the
That'll
other
be-
side
this is
less
the
time to
playbook,
investigate,
and
too.
this is the rubric for down the line if something goes wrong. Oh, look, we weren't on the ballot in Ohio. That we probably weren't going to win
And it was
anyway.
Republicans in the state legislature who blocked us.
Even though our party set the convention 2 years in advance.
No, it's not
This
going to
doesn't
matter.
make any sense.
Everyone's going to blame everybody else no matter what happens come November.
Yeah. And it's going to be everybody else's fault.
It will be. I don't see a resolution. I don't. Look, man, you put a little puzzle in front of me and I'll work to figure it out and be like, oh, that makes sense. You give me a jigsaw puzzle, I'll start putting the edges together and figure out what the picture is. I don't know what the picture is for November. I guess the only thing we can conclude is no matter what happens, no one agrees. Like, Biden wins? No way. Trump wins? No way. And maybe that's the complete picture. It's a Jackson Pollock painting.
I can't think of an instance in history when things have been this corrupt in any civilization. I'm by no means an expert, where that level of corruption has been reversed peacefully.
Ah, yes.
And that's really a challenging thing for me to wrap my head
I
around.
think it's inevitable that the loser of the upcoming election will have like a certain percent of their base that no matter what happens will say the election was stolen if they lost. I think we would see another January 6th like event if Trump lost. I think there's going to be people who do the not my president stuff with Trump if he wins.
Yeah.
So either way.
They teased it in 2016 too, because Hillary basically denied the. Did she ever even concede the election in 2016?
She did concede.
Yeah.
But then she immediately started saying he's a Russian agent. It's illegitimate.
Right.
The Russians stole it from me.
Illegitimate was the word they used.
And
not
then
unelected.
I think she
Right.
said she won, didn't she? What did she say in that? She's like, you could do everything right,
She won the popular vote.
and it could be taken away from you or something like that.
I also believe there was a certain amount of Democrats who chose not to certify that election as well,
Yeah.
of Trump coming in. It wasn't an amount to do anything significant, but
Well, I just saw a video.
Symbolic.
yeah.
I just saw a video of Keith Olbermann in 2004 saying that election was stolen.
Yeah. I mean, if you lose,
haven't-
you're gonna call it stolen.
Haven't Democrats
is he
claimed
famous
every Republican win has been stolen?
I used to see him on ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you lose, they're going to call it stolen.
I just pulled this NPR headline that says Clinton won't rule out. This is from September 2017. Clinton won't rule out questioning 2016 election, but says no clear means to do so. So like she was always saying, well, maybe there was something, maybe we should look into
Right.
this, even though this is not something Republicans are allowed to do. I mean, that was a year afterwards, almost.
The hypocrisy.
I like to think back. I'm imagining 2016, and I wanted to say something like, remember the good old days, 2016, and then I'm just thinking about like, Obama killing people, and I was like, yeah, it's been pretty bad since like 2000. It's been getting worse.
Yes. Since
Yeah.
9/11, everything's gotten worse.
Right.
On the right and the left. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at the right wing sponsored, I know the left wing sponsored it too, but the Patriot Act, a lot of these, the Warhawks, a lot of neocon stuff was problematic too. And that's like the whole thing the whole realization that I had was that it's not that I used to always think the Republicans were better than the Democrats because I was a capitalist who believed in American values. And the fact of the matter is they both increased spending. They both increase inflation, which disproportionately impacts the most vulnerable among us and makes the rich richer because the stock market explodes when inflation happens, and they're the only ones with money in the market. And they both fuck the American people over and over again. And that's why I think the people are becoming populist, because they're realizing that it's not about Republicans versus Democrats, but it's about the people versus the
Well, I think the people have always been populist, but I think the issue is they didn't have a vehicle for it.
Yes.
And so, I talked to Bannon about this with Occupy Wall Street. When Occupy Wall Street first started, it was a general grievance against big banks and government bailouts. And then the right insulted the people who went there. And so the left latched onto it. And what was a general, neutral, moderate, populist beginning, within a week or two, turned into leftist college trust fund kids.
Yeah.
The first weekend I was there, there's this elderly couple in their 60s sitting on a couch with an American flag. And they're like, we're here because the government is screwing over the working class. Big old American flag. And then I'm like, why is it that Breitbart immediately starts insulting these people? Hannity immediately starts insulting these people. The libertarian-minded and conservative-minded individuals who are there immediately leave, and the leftists celebrate their victory. And then Occupy Wall Street turned into weird woke garbage. So I remember when Occupy first happens, Hannity is just going nuts insulting everything Occupy is doing.
I fell for it. I remember I was in college. I was
Yeah.
so upset about Occupy Wall Street because I was a Ayn Rand capitalist guy. I was just an idiot kid.
Yeah, and I was talking when I mentioned to Ben, and I was like, dude, if when Occupy Wall Street started that first week, you showed up with like the Breitbart populist right, it would have been a unified front.
Yeah.
Bannon, I was like, you could have walked down there and said, tax the rich, and they all would have cheered, and it would have united Tea Party and Occupy, because Occupy wasn't leftist. When it started, look, man, I got to tell you, leftists are better than the right at organizing and revolution and all this stuff. Occupy Wall Street was vague and nebulous. There was something called Operation Empire State Rebellion that was being organized on 4chan, and that was related in general to government bailouts, government overreach, the corruption in government in general. Occupy Wall Street was announced by leftists, fair, but what happens is the people who want to show up to protest big banks don't care about Democrat or Republican. This was during the Obama years.
Right after this major crash, which impacted everybody.
Right. And so it was general, the government is screwing us over, the banks are screwing us over, the bailouts are screwing us over. And it was a prime opportunity for people on the right to come in and join with moderate default left liberal individuals. A month before Occupy, leftists held an organizing meeting to make sure it operated under their control. That first week when people showed up, it was random people.
Right.
There was one guy who was like the most Democrat-looking guy you can imagine, arguing with anarchists. Like I mentioned, there was the elderly with the American flag saying we're just here for America, that kind of sentiment. But then you end up with, people like Breitbart and that crew immediately just disregarding everything they were doing.
It's crazy because the left planned, as you're suggesting in that pre-meeting, to control the movement, but it was actually the right-wing outlets that alienated the right base.
It's both. I think
Fascinating.
like one of the reasons why the left organized this was to make sure that the likes of Breitbart and the populist right wouldn't go anywhere near it. They knew what the Tea Party was. We went to a Tea Party event in where was it? Me and a bunch of the other people who were on the ground covering the stuff. And got word that Occupy people wanted to go check out a Tea Party thing and see what they were doing. And there were 2 or 3 instances where there were Tea Party rallies and Occupy people showed up to watch and listen to what people were saying. So they knew exactly what was going on. They knew exactly what the Tea Party was upset about. And the people who organized to take over Occupy were elitist, NGO, many funded by, Open Society Foundation, things like that. And I remember that video where Breitbart's screaming at the protesters at CPAC, you're all animals, you're all animals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but those were the leftists who took over Occupy. And I'm just like, I wish Bannon showed up on day one of Occupy and just said, look, I'm not here to argue about left, right, up, down, or otherwise. I'm here to say the rich are screwing over the American people. And then you would have had the Tea Party and Occupy as one populist front.
Whatever happened to the Tea Party? Why did it just vanish out of nowhere?
I don't know.
It was like a major threat, right? There was going to be this major schism in the Republican Party, and then all of a sudden nobody said Tea Party again for like 10 years until they started referring to it historically.
Yeah.
I think they had their moment for a little bit, but then they kind
Yeah.
of got appropriated and just kind of eaten by the party. And
Yeah, I was gonna say I felt like they got blended back in because there wasn't clear direction, leadership to completely split
Yeah.
off.
You know what's crazy, Tim, about what you were saying about demographic shifts with the boomers dying is that it's not only going to impact the entire political landscape, but I think it's going to disproportionately impact the Republican Party because a lot of the boomer base and the silent generation base are conservative leaning. And so when they're gone, all that's going to be left are the MAGA Republicans or the populist Republicans. I mean, do you foresee like almost like a I don't know, rejuvenation or radicalization of the Republican Party as a result of this?
I think we're seeing a rejuvenation and an explosion of the Libertarian Party. So this weekend, well, we got RFK Jr.
Yeah.
You've got Vivek's going to be there.
Yeah.
Trump is going to be there.
Yep.
Ron Paul is going to be there. This is going to be the biggest political, let's call it a bonanza. Because when you say political party, people don't get it. But I'm like, this
Yeah.
is like, if you work in politics, culture, news, political commentary, pundit, PACs, it's in DC, you're there. Everyone's going to be there except Democrats, right? So it's almost like if the older Republicans end up leaving, there's going to be an interesting overlap, a much bigger overlap between the Libertarian Party with like the Mises Caucus and the Republican Party. Right now, I think with the Libertarian Party of the Mises Caucus, these guys, they're not fans of the Republicans because the Republicans are, you got a whole bunch of uniparty establishment garbage. But to your point, when the older generations are gone and the younger guys are more MAGA, then it's going to be like a lot more libertarian people are going to have overlap with the Republicans that might actually, it might be significant.
Do you think that at that point, the Republican Party, still being a stronger, more organized force than the Libertarian Party, will absorb the Libertarian Party?
No. But they'll absorb probably a lot of people from the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
This is why Trump is speaking there.
Yes.
Because he sees that, I mean, he said something about it already where it's like, I can't remember what he said, but he said something about when they announced he's speaking there. I think his pitch is really simple. You go to the Libertarians and you say, I didn't start any wars. I'm going to protect your guns. All right? That's all I can do for you. If that's good enough, some of you might vote for me, some of you might not, but let's not let the Democrats win.
I think the Libertarian Party was a nice experiment, but now it is essentially electorally just an asset for the Democrats. They just take a couple of points away from Republicans in states that they can win. I think it's actually been an issue in a few states, including West Virginia, where we're at now. And unfortunately, I think the direction of the Libertarian Party also kind of sucks. I think we all had a little libertarian phase that we grew out of. I think the Libertarian Party used to be angled more about loving guns, being against
Legalizing prostitution.
legalizing weed.
Right,
but now it's turning into something that's anti-NATO.
Right. But this argument that the Republicans would win if not for the Libertarian Party is just not true.
In some elections, for sure, they
Absolutely
have.
not true.
A couple of
Didn't Jo Jorgensen, didn't she have enough votes in a couple of
Jo
the swing states last
Jorgensen
time?
was woke leftist.
I understand, but she ran as a
as
Libertarian
a
candidate.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in what world do woke leftists vote Republican when the Libertarian Party doesn't exist?
Oh, there you go.
I think the Libertarian Party
Jorgensen-
needs to be a part of the Republican Party. Like it needs
But the Libertarians don't like Republicans. This is the craziest thing to me. Like, you spend 10 minutes with a Libertarian and you're like, these people are not Republicans. They will not vote Republican. Dude, you've got people, Austin Peterson is giving an interview and he says something about like, we don't want people selling heroin to children. And they go, boo. They're not voting Republican.
But in the same vein, the Democratic Socialists of America are barely Democrats, but they're still Democrats, although they are socialists. And, there's no consensus in the Democrat Party on a lot of the issues that they talk about. So just like they're a part of the Democrat Party, there needs to be
I think Libertarians are more mixed than that.
The Democratic Socialists are the Democrats' version of MAGA, right?
Let me tell you what Democratic Socialism
Yes.
is.
The Republican Party has the MAGA
Yes, because the
elements.
Bernie voters, when they were pissed about Bernie getting the election stolen from them in the primary in 2016, a lot of them went Trump.
Right. So 9 million Democrats voted for Trump.
Right.
That was the
Democratic
number.
Socialists voted
So,
for Donald Trump. I mean, that's,
MAGA, right populist, is the insurgent force in the Republican Party,
Yes.
and the Democratic Socialists are the insurgent force in the Democrat Party. Libertarians don't like either of them, and it is a mistake people make when they think if the Libertarian Party didn't exist, Republicans would win. Dude, there's a reason why Dave Smith is on Fox News ragging on Trump. Not going to vote for Trump. There's a reason why there is a libertarian party.
Because they're electorally immature is what I would say. That's why people like Dave Smith go on Fox News and rag on people like Trump.
doesn't
because
like Trump?
when you are, I know, but when it comes down to it, you really have to choose between Joe Biden and President
Well,
Trump.
libertarians
There
are less
issues with-
Machiavellian, though.
Yes, but-
They're not willing to vote
Yeah,
for a
you know,
lesser
but
of
that's
two
why
evils.
they're-
Again, you don't understand libertarians' views. Imagine this. Imagine saying, why aren't Democrats voting for Trump? Why aren't Democrats voting for Trump?
because they think Trump's a fascist.
And this is why libertarians don't want to vote for Trump.
But do they
Now-
see a difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump?
No.
That's wild. Okay, I think for people like
it's like saying, why are Democrats voting for Joe
It's
Biden?
very counterintuitive, but I think he's right.
The reason why Trump wants to speak to the LP National is because he thinks there's now, I'm assuming with the Mises Caucus, there is enough, a small number that would be willing to vote for Trump. He may be able to move them. The majority of libertarians are not Republicans. Many of them are woke. Did you see what Louisiana's Libertarian Party posted? Guns for illegal immigrants? Yeah, there's no way those people are voting for Republicans.
I think because libertarians can't see a difference between somebody like Joe Biden and Donald Trump is why these guys need to grow up. The whole party, the whole Libertarian Party needs to be abolished. If you can't see a difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, maybe that's why you guys are allergic to winning any
but again,
elections.
I don't think you understand, right?
I mean, that's because
They
that's
don't. They don't win any elections.
They don't.
so.
They're electorally irrelevant, and they just exist to kind of run their mouths because again, they don't have to appeal to people electorally, and they can just take a couple of points away from Republicans.
Well,
It doesn't
if-
really
if-
matter.
Okay,
There are no
once
expectations.
again, Elad, they are not taking points away from Republicans. The
Wait,
idea
you
that
believe they
Joe
don't take-
Jorgensen, who said, quote, it is not enough to oppose racism. What did she say? It is not enough to be anti-racist. You must, what's this? I tried to.
It's not enough to oppose racism. You must be anti-racist.
You must be actively anti-racist.
Right.
Joe Jorgensen
It's like
tweeted
Ivermectin
that.
Kendi shit.
But the Mises
yeah,
Caucus are the
literally
people who run
woke leftism.
The Mises Caucus is who's in charge of the
They
Libertarian
just
Party
took
now.
over.
Yeah.
And while many of them will have a sound, reasonable debate about Donald Trump and the things that they do agree with, that's like saying Republicans agree with Joe Biden on getting rid of ATM fees that screw over the working class.
Well, you
So
gotta
they're
get rid
gonna
of
vote
those
for Joe
ATM
Biden.
fees when it comes out that your son took out $1.6 million in cash from ATMs. Did you
I
see that today?
agree. Right. I agree.
How much time and minutes would that take?
I agree with Joe Biden. Joe Biden said the bank charging people these junk fees are screwing over the
Sure,
working class.
sure.
I will never vote for that man. And the idea that because Donald Trump is likely better on guns, libertarians who are concerned that Donald Trump increased drone strikes, removed the transparency from drone strikes, authorized commando raids in places like Yemen, backed the Saudis in their strikes in Yemen, which was 100,000 dead children in Yemen, the fact that Donald Trump fired 59 Tomahawk missiles into Syria, they will not vote for that. Now,
The libertarians, correct.
that being
Yes.
said, I do think from a realist perspective, if you look at Trump's foreign policy holistically, it's the best foreign policy of my life. So yes, everything I said was true about Trump. What he did was we had the Abraham Accords. We had Donald Trump crossing into North Korea through the DMZ with no security detail in a sign of peace and goodwill with an enemy nation. That's the kind of stuff we need. That's leadership. The Abraham Accords, I think, were absolutely tremendous. Dave Smith disagrees. Dave Smith said that, and I hate to argue for him because he's not here and he could say it better, but he said the Abraham Accords isolated Palestine, Hamas, and put pressure on them, which was in the attack we saw on October 7th was inevitable because the Abraham Accords basically said, we have cut you out of negotiations. So this is the kind of pressure that results in. I do think that argument is silly because it's the idea of like we shouldn't negotiate peace because other people might get mad. But that his position is Trump did a bad thing there. I don't agree with that. People keep saying over and over again, if it weren't for the Libertarian Party, Republicans would win. And I'm like, it sounds like you've not met libertarians. The guy at a Libertarian convention, a guy ripped his clothes off and got naked on stage. Is that guy going to vote Republican? It's ridiculous. And the fact that you have woke libertarians, one of the guys running for the Libertarian Party president is super woke. Climate change, all that stuff. These people aren't going to vote for the Republicans. They all collectively just don't like Republicans or Democrats. And they have their own worldviews that are competing with each other. When you look at Jonathan Haidt's research on the moral foundations, you find that Democrats, this is what they claim, Democrats have care and fairness, Republicans are balanced across the board, and libertarians have one moral foundation. And you know what it is? Liberty. And that's disgusting. Liberty's fantastic, don't get me wrong. Take the moral foundations test, and I'll give you one of the questions. pertaining to the Liberty Moral Foundation. People should be allowed to have adult toys modeled after their underage niece. It's one of the questions that they ask on the Moral Foundation's test. Libertarians say yes. Are those people voting for Republicans? No. That you take the what is it, like IDR Labs or whatever Moral Foundations test? That's one of the questions it asks.
It's a good question.
And
it gets to the point.
It gets to the point of purity,
Right.
which is something conservatives believe in. It's related to cleanliness, avoiding disease. Liberals do not have that moral foundation. Libertarians do not have that moral foundation. Libertarians only care as long as there's no harm being done to a person,
Right.
it's allowed.
As long as no one's rights are being violated.
And I'm
it
kind of
must be
like,
allowed.
we should
so like
never
AI
allow
child
a
porn.
business
AI
to do
child
that.
porn would be an example, right? Libertarians just
Crime.
say you can make as much AI child porn as you want. It's not harming any real person. Conservatives would be like, ugh.
I think at the end of the day, because you are electorally irrelevant, you could have these purist positions on a lot of these issues and say, no, I guess
I think
Joe
it's
Biden
why they're
isn't
kind of
anymore.
irrelevant.
Any
I
version
agree
of
with
Donald
you.
Trump.
All right, fair point. Then what your real argument is, disband the Libertarian Party and it goes 50-50 Democrat, Republican.
Best thing the Libertarian Party could do is disband the party and endorse Donald Trump. Yeah. What do you think Donald
Why
Trump
would
should...
woke leftists endorse Donald Trump? What don't you get?
Well, I
Mises
agree it's the
Caucus
best
is
thing they
what
could
is
do,
in
but
charge
I
of
don't
the
think they're
Libertarian
relevant.
Party. It's Dave Smith who's headlining
the Mises Caucus
Libertarian
is
convention.
right now, and in the convention that's coming up, one of the candidates is woke.
Yeah, but he's not
they're-
popular within the party.
Their last candidate was woke.
Joe Jorgensen was
So
the candidate.
the issue
He was pretty
is,
woke.
yes, the Mises Caucus took over right now. But if the Libertarian Party disbanded, what you're basically saying is the Mises Caucus should endorse Donald Trump. And then you're going to have a whole bunch of Mises Caucus people being like, but we don't support his foreign policy.
I don't think it would go down 50-50 if the Libertarian Party were to
Yeah,
disband.
60-40, what?
But let me ask you, what do you think Donald Trump should say when he addresses the Libertarian convention to try to win them over?
I will, at the very least, secure the border, make sure your gun rights are intact, and this country exists.
A lot of libertarians don't
He
even
will-
believe in borders.
He will get booed by majority of people there. But Trump is simply trying to say, seeing the Mises Caucus take over means that there are enough people who might just say right now, I'm just going to vote for Trump. Because he's right about the border, he's right about guns, he's right about abortion. The Mises Caucus is different from the entirety of the Libertarian Party. And the important issue is the Mises Caucus victory is one iteration right now of the Libertarian Party. And I think it's likely because a lot of people don't like the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And so they found a sort of moderate space in the Libertarian Party with the Mises Caucus, where they're not Republicans, they're not hardcore conservative traditionalists, but they don't like war, they want to have their guns, they want their Bitcoin and their marijuana. Donald Trump is going to try to win some of them over. And it's a smart move and he should do it. But keep in mind, the last election cycle, you had woke libertarians. The Libertarian Party was overwhelmingly woke, anti-racist. And everyone was like, whoa, this is crazy.
And there's a lot of infighting in the Libertarian Party constantly.
Absolutely.
I mean, the woke libertarians versus the hardcore capitalist libertarians. I mean, they can't agree on anything. It's like a family going through a divorce always.
But I just want to stress this point. Go hang out at a bar with someone from the Libertarian Party, and you're going to be like, now I get it. This guy's not a Republican. Like,
Yeah. You driving home? Hell yeah, and I'm not wearing my seatbelt.
the guy took his clothes off on stage. They booed. They wanted to be able to sell heroin to kids. Not all of them. The Mises Caucus guys aren't like that. We like the Mises Caucus guys, but the Mises Caucus is also not traditionalist, and they're not going to be arguing for traditional families in the same way conservatives are. And so they're going to be at odds on social issues to a certain degree. But the Mises Caucus people typically are pro-life, pro-border, and pro-gun rights. So that's Trump's opportunity right now. He's not hoping to win over the Libertarian Party. I think Trump knows he's going to be booed. It's going to be wild. He's going to get booed by that crowd. But he's like, if I can get 5%, of the Libertarian Party, just that little bit that might agree with me, and I bet he might say something like, you don't like me, you don't like my policies, I got a lot of bad ones, but Joe Biden will rip your country to shreds, and at least with me to keep your country, and then fight another day.
You know, the fact that the Libertarian Party can get Trump and others to come and speak actually, in my opinion, shows the dormant power of the party. And the reason is, like, if you look at it from a logical standpoint, if the Libertarian Party got their shit together, they could choose to focus all of their efforts campaigning in just Texas, for example. And if they pulled enough support away from the Republican Party for the Libertarian Party that it could threaten the Electoral College just in Texas, if they focused all their monetary resources, all their time, all their advertising, they could literally whip the Republican Party into changing its policies in exchange for an endorsement. Like if they just focused on Texas, they could change the entire Republican Party in a similar way that Bernie Sanders was able to change a lot of Hillary's policies in 2016 because he pulled so much of the vote from her in the primary.
Let's jump to this next story. You're going to love this one because we got a new poll. This is from Marist National. Almost half of Americans think the U.S. could erupt into a second civil war in their lifetime. 47%. And the funny thing is, it breaks down. You know what's really weird is I don't quite understand this. It says majority of women, 51%, believe there's a good chance it will happen. 57% of men disagree. Mostly men don't think it'll happen. It's women who think there will be a civil war. Now, the reason that's significant, the French Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, they say were instigated because women got up and rose up. When women get unhappy and get involved in politics, things start to destabilize. So if women think the Civil War is coming, I don't know. I feel kind of worried about that. But what say you, good sir?
Well, like I said earlier, I can't think of a time in history when corruption has reached this level and it's been peacefully walked back. The question is when. So a lot of people say it's going to happen next year, no matter what happens in this election. I think it's inevitable that we'll have another civil war in this country, but what I can't decide is whether or not it's going to be within the next 10 years or within the next 100 years. That's where I struggle.
This is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, that when you look at polarization, it's generational.
Yeah.
So again, as I described it, it's a piece of paper being torn from the youngest generation up to the top.
Yep.
But it's really not so much that we're tearing it. It's that just imagine you've got this thread and the older generation's at top and the bottom is splitting as it moves down. Yeah. Actually, one way to put it is our society is a giant block of cheese.
Right.
And there is a wedge to slice that cheese, and the cheese block is being pushed down.
Right. The division is an increasing proportion of the political landscape.
As the older generation dies and the younger generation becomes either gets grabbed by the left or the right, new people entering the voting block are going to be hyperpolarized to further and further degrees. And the older generation that overlap on the Democrat-Republican side are dying and no longer part of the equation. So 2028, 2032,
well,
I think 2028 is the
voter
fourth
turnout
turning.
thing too. Like I said before we started streaming today, the voter turnout in 1860 was giant, and we saw record voter turnout in 2020. The higher the voter turnout, the more politically divided people are, in my opinion. And we always hear advocating, everybody needs to vote, participate in the process. If you have a high voter turnout, that's a very good indicator that you're close to a civil war.
I also think this poll says that the youngest generation, it's like Gen Z and millennials, 58% are think there's a likelihood that there could be a civil war in this country. I think that is an indication that it could potentially come because the older generations that at one time thought, well, we're actually unified by our culture or unified by religion or whatever else, like they will ultimately leave positions of power. And this younger generation that has always seen politics as the dividing line, and increasingly more so with younger generations, they will then step into the positions and will say, well, we knew this was inevitable. Where an older generation would say, no, we're supposed to be together. We're all one country.
This is actually my point. I mean, take a look at this. 58% of Gen Z and millennial voters believe civil war is likely. 19% of silent generation, 46% of Gen X, and 34% of boomers. So let's break it down. Silent generation is the oldest. Only 19% think civil war is likely. Why? Because all of these people, Democrat and Republican, who are in their late 60s and 70s, go hang out and play bridge or whatever, and they're like, but we agree on most things. How could there be a civil war? Then you get baby boomers, 34%. Same issue. They're meeting up and saying, but we agree on most things, but I do think, John across the street's got some weird views. Gen Xers are more online, more active, more political, and they're seeing what's going on. And Gen Z and millennials at 58. If that trend continues, when Gen Alpha enters the voting block, it's going to be 70% of Gen Alpha that says yes. Then what comes after Gen Alpha?
I don't know. I can look it up.
Well, and then the question is who in the minds of the pollsters, who is fighting who in this imaginary civil war, and then who wins? Because before it was very clear, South versus the North, but now it seems more like urban versus rural. But who fights in the war? Yeah, who do people foresee will fight in the civil war?
Who was fighting in the Syrian civil war?
I don't know.
It was like 13 different factions.
13 different factions.
And then ultimately they all got absorbed into ISIS.
So you think that's what's going to happen in this next civil war? Won't be two sides like what we think of the traditional American Civil War?
The American Civil War is
pockets.
atypical in terms of most countries' histories. So the Spanish Civil War is a better example. And it's usually urban versus rural. And usually it is the rural that wins.
I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think, unlike in many other countries on planet Earth, in America, we have a lot to fight for and a lot of great opportunity. A lot of our institutions are incredibly established. There's a defund the police movement in our country that didn't go anywhere policy-wise. People in our country still support our military. People still have faith in the Supreme Court and the law. People still believe that courts exist and are functioning properly. So this is a country where we're also given many freedoms and many opportunities for things to go astray if people actually wanted them to. We have the First and Second Amendment. People could say almost anything and have firearms to back it up, but we haven't seen huge uprisings of armed people. Although I hear about these militias throughout the country, I haven't seen these large uprisings of gangs of people.
I think we lack a culture that reminds people that we are actually a united front. I mean, my theory would be that the silent generation lived through things like school integration and all kinds of social change that actually made them question, like, what do we want as a culture? What are our values? And ultimately say this is something that we are collaboratively working on. Our country is worth preserving. And in fact, even through difficult change, we are ultimately rallying around the idea that we are Americans and we have a shared vision.
Right. Which is why Joe Biden's the president of unity.
Well, and that's the thing. They say that word over and over again, but younger people actually look at people who don't agree with them politically as an enemy. They view them as a threat, right?
I kind of do.
This idea.
I'm serious, but I think you're absolutely right in your analysis. I'm 33 years old, and I've gotten to the point where my sentiments toward people who disagree with me politically have gotten much more combative.
Well, and this is reinforced by the idea that
and I'm not even saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that about myself.
Right. Well, this is reinforced by the fact that certain schools in certain districts in certain that vote a certain way have rules that a kid can transition here and we'll call them by whatever pronouns, but we won't tell the parents because we view those parents as potential threats to these children who are a different voter bloc. I mean, I think that ultimately,
which makes me feel combative towards those
these
teachers.
issues are important, but I think even despite Joe Biden's economic downturn and these issues like trans issues that I think are very significant, people start civil wars when they don't have things worth fighting for and protecting, when things are going bad and astray for them and they don't have anything going on for them. In our country, we do have it relatively well.
What do
A
you
good
mean?
amount of, compared to other countries.
No. What civil wars were started because people had it was bad for people?
Well, as I understand, civil wars are generally started by the civil wars that I think we're seeing right now that are possibly happening, like in the Arab Spring and things like that. People not being fed enough, people not being paid enough, people are discontent.
People about to lose their
But
slaves.
those are revolutions. So with the Arab Spring, the governments toppled instantly, and then they replaced them. Whereas civil wars are factional violence based on ideology. Like the Spanish Civil War was the communists and the anti-communists. And then, of course, there's a lot of leftists that argue that it was like fascistic militarism on the right or whatever. But it was basically communists were going around and doing horrible things and where ideology was spreading. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think what caused a lot of the... certainly you can make an argument about the Bolsheviks in Russia and the struggles that Russia's, going through in terms of food and the French Revolution. But I think we saw with Europe in the early 1900s, things were too good in some places. So with the United States, you have idle hands being the devil's playground. You have young people who don't have to do any work and they have no purpose and they're bored. They don't understand. I mean, look.
Man, I'm not, you think people go to Civil War because they're bored?
Well,
Yes.
I do
Let
see
me
at the
explain.
most elite colleges, that's where we are seeing the
Yes.
hardest,
Yeah,
like, most aggressive
the hunger strike
versions
amongst
of
the most well-fed.
leftist LARPs.
But let me
Yeah.
explain. Young people today are struggling.
Yes.
Some of them legitimately because the system is busted. Some of them because they were not raised properly by their parents to know how to work and produce and survive. So what happens is you have two political parties. One is a parasite class where they believe that the government should print as much money as possible. They believe in deficit spending.
Monetary theory.
Exactly. And so all this does is leech off of the working class. That system collapses. And what we're seeing now is an expansion of it where many people are of the mindset that the government should pay their bills, should print more money, deficit spending and things like this, which result in hyperinflation. Then when inflation happens, what does Joe Biden do? It's the corporations that are ripping you off.
Right. They blame it on capitalism, but it's actually kind of fascism.
Then they reenact more government policies which destroy the system further until it collapses. And that's intentional for the communists. The reason this is happening is because Idle hands is the devil's playground. If these people had to wake up in the morning and feed the animals and then work all day and had very little time to do anything, there'd be no communist revolution. They would just be working, living, and they would be content with life. But they want what you have because you're working and they're not.
So it's envy even more than boredom.
100% envy. Communism is all envy. They look at people who, look at the tenets of communism, what they think. I love this. You know, hearing these people argue about socialism and they're like, socialism is when labor, the workers own the company and not their bosses. Well, what did they say? They said when your labor is controlled by the people and you and not your boss. And I'm like,
Right.
In capitalism, the labor is controlled by you. In communism, your labor is controlled by the state. But they lie to implement these things. In a free market capitalist society, you are free to sell your labor for whatever you can get for it. The problem is, in today's society, you've got kids who have no sellable skills because of the way society told them to live their lives, which is a problem. This, I think, leads to anger, animosity, fear, confusion, and false prophets. Political individuals who come up and say, I have the solution to what ails you. It's called communism. And they go, okay. And then they start burning down buildings.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm very concerned after. If you read like The Fourth Turning, and if you think that maybe we're on the verge of an economic collapse 2028, I'm very much concerned about the fork in the road that we will be at, where as a country we're going to choose, I think much like the Weimar Republic had to choose, Germans had to choose at the end of the Weimar Republic between communism and fascism as the solution. And that's why I advocate for populism, and I wrote this book, is because I'm hoping there's a third option that's healthy and doesn't result in the death of millions of people. But I think we're quickly coming up on a place where it is going to reach the level of desperation and simultaneously the level of boredom necessary to catalyze a collapse that brings us to choose between full-on communism versus
No
fascism.
one thought civil war was possible in 1860. When the first Battle of Bull Run happened, people were picnicking on the hill because no one thought civil war was possible. The funny thing is, we believe that the Civil War started with the Battle of Fort Sumter when the Union troops were refusing to vacate South Carolina. When that happened, the North and the South did not think there was a civil war.
Right.
And the people who lived, and this is just south of D.C., Manassas, when they heard that the Confederacy was marching and there was going to be a battle, they were like, no, there won't.
Right.
So they picnicked and they were watching and like, oh, this is silly.
They thought they were watching a Civil War reenactment for a Civil War that hadn't happened yet.
Well, they didn't think anything was happening. Yet historically, we say those people were in a civil war,
Right.
even though they didn't believe it. I don't understand why, despite all of the history we have globally about revolutions and civil war, people maintain the same naivety of, if I don't see someone come out and yell, I hereby declare civil war, it can't happen, it's not happening, and it won't happen.
Right.
Meanwhile, you've had since 2017, so I did this thing with ChatGPT earlier, talking about civil war, where it desperately, ChatGPT loves to lie to you, desperately says, there's no civil war, nothing's going to happen. And so I asked it, are we in civil strife? Yes, we are in civil strife. ChatGPT says this. Civil strife is the academic term for the period before Civil War. It's Bleeding Kansas, for instance. That was civil strife. Academics now believe we are in this period right now. What's the evidence? Hillary Clinton claimed Donald Trump was a Russian agent. It was illegitimately elected. 2020 happened. The right says that Joe Biden was illegitimately elected. January 6 riots and protests. You have, right now, civil strife where far leftists have killed people. There have been some fighting throughout the streets, Summer of Love, for instance. There's been urban conflict, weaponization of government against the front runner for the Republican Party, the highest polling man in the presidential race right now. They're trying to put in prison.
Right. And they took Abraham Lincoln off the ballots too. I mean, it's literally
technically
rhyming.
not true.
I thought they did.
The Republican Party didn't issue any ballots in the southern states because nobody would have voted for him in a secessionist state.
Really?
So the way it used to work back then was parties would issue their own ballots being like, if you believe in our party, here's our list of candidates that we want you to vote for. The Republicans in the southern states did nothing because they were like, what's the point? And it is true, in the states that went on to secede, not a single vote was cast for Abraham Lincoln. So where we're at right now, civil strife, fact. In 2017, numerous national security experts were interviewed by The Atlantic, and their estimates ranged between 30 and 95% likelihood of civil war. Maybe they're wrong. What do I know? ChatGPT keeps saying it won't happen, it can't happen. And then if you ask it to actually cite sources, it will eventually break down and tell you, yes, we are on the cusp of civil war in this country. It's fascinating.
It might be one of those things hard-coded into it where it just cannot say civil war is going to happen.
Well-
like, it cannot say violent things are going to happen and boom, civil war, unkosher.
For instance, before we started the show, I was showing Chase, if you ask ChatGPT if the FBI was authorized to use lethal force in the Mar-a-Lago raid, it says no. And then if you say, this is incorrect, search the web, it goes, still no. Then if you say, you have to be like 5 times, you are wrong. Here's the news report. It goes, yes, you are actually correct. It will lie to you over and over and over again. No, no, no. Anyway, my point is not that ChatGPT is the arbiter of morality or whatever, but general academic consensus right now is we are in civil strife.
Well, and I think it's like bankruptcy. They say about bankruptcy that it comes on slowly and then all at once.
Right.
And we're like the frog in the water analogy, and we're in that stage right now where it seems like it's coming on slowly, that we don't realize it's happening, and then it's like you said,
Gradually,
it's gonna happen.
then suddenly.
Yeah, gradually, then suddenly.
But I think the issue is that,
Who'd you fight for?
well, I think the issue is that when you're hanging on to the edge of a ledge about to fall off, you're in one place. Your speed is 0 miles an hour. And your fingers are slipping on the edge until it's just your fingertips,
Right.
and you are still moving at 0 miles an hour.
Until you're at terminal velocity.
And in an instant. But anybody who's watching you hang from that cliff by one hand says, any second now, he's going to be going 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, and then he's going to be on his path to, falling down this cliffside. But for the whole time the escalation is happening, you are at 0 miles an hour.
Right, there's no change, no apparent change.
Right. So I don't know what happens. I don't know what happens in November. But what I can say is when you look at the generational polling, it's fairly obvious that Gen Z, nearly 60% of Gen Z and millennials think a civil war is likely. Gen Alpha, and as the chat pointed out, it's Generation Beta is after Gen Alpha.
They'll be raised by
Is that
Gen
so?
Z.
That's not a joke.
And they'll be born.
I thought Gen Z was beta.
Generation.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
How often do you
know?
think they'll switch sides?
So that is 2025 will be the first year of beta. And that means today, the oldest Generation Alpha are 14 years old. So by 2028, Gen Alpha is voting.
Yeah.
If Gen Alpha's view of civil war is 65 to 70%, I mean, we could actually just take these numbers, average out the difference, and then find what the likelihood increase in perception of civil war would be. What do you think happens when millennials are the oldest living generation with a 60% belief in civil wars coming, and basically the reason they believe it is because millennials and Gen Z are looking across the chasm at the other side going, holy crap, these people are crazy.
Yeah. Well, and what do you think the correlation is between belief that something is going to happen and then it actually happening?
That's what I'm saying. Silent generation Democrats and Republicans are playing bridge together going, but we agree on everything.
Right.
Back in the 90s, when boomers were in their 30s, I think that's when they were in their 30s, right? If you look at Pew Research,
My parents are boomers. They're 75 years old.
Is 70? Yeah, 75 would be boomer. I think Trump is the oldest boomer. So, but there's an overlap. So it would have been the 80s and the 90s. At this time period, politics was relatively unified. I mean, look at Reagan. I mean, landslide victory for Reagan,
Right.
in the early 80s. So then you look at the 90s and you look at Pew's research showing the political parties overlap, and they barely differ. Some key wedge issues for the most part, but it really didn't matter all that
Right.
much.
Famously, Clinton's speeches about solving the immigration problem when he was president,
Yeah,
things like that.
Democrats
Very
marrying
Republican
Republicans and vice versa.
Right.
The issue now is that millennials are saying something like, yeah, wow, we've got an immigration problem. And then the right says, we got a serious problem with immigration at the southern border. And then AOC comes out and says, you're a Nazi. The reason why the belief is so pronounced in the younger generations is because I am 38. When I look at a 38-year-old Democrat, they're saying things that seem otherworldly.
Yes.
They believe Trump is a white supremacist neo-Nazi who wants to put kids in cages.
At the demographic level, there's less disparity in the older demographic.
Exactly.
I see what you're saying.
So
Like
the
cheese wedge.
That's what I'm saying. It's
I get it.
splitting at the wedge, and eventually you'll have two distinct blocks of cheese far away from each other.
Right. And in the younger demographics, political differences are just simply not compatible in a peaceful society.
That's what's worrying.
Yeah.
I mean, take a look at, drag shows with kids.
Right.
These are crimes in West Virginia.
And the states don't have enough independent rights to really have even much of a difference as the federal government gets so much more powerful.
Look at
and so ideas are forced at a federal level.
Oklahoma and Colorado are the best example. Colorado, abortion is legal up to birth. Oklahoma, it's entirely banned. Ridiculous bifurcation right there. I used to think that abortion could be a catalyst for a civil war, but I don't think so anymore because babies can't fight for themselves the way slaves did. So
I think despite how many of my compatriots feel about Civil War, I feel like if it could have happened, there were a lot of catalyst events that could have made it happen that didn't spark a Civil War. We had January 6th. We had the election of Donald Trump where liberals could have said, oh, this is a coup. He's illegitimately elected by Russians. We had the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which many people could argue whatever they want about. So there's a lot of different jump off points where I think things could have happened where they didn't, which gives me a lot of more faith in the stability of our country. We've already had Joe Biden and Donald Trump being arrested without, or having elected without, the country falling into civil war. So
did you see Joe Biden called Trump an erectionist?
No, he's an erectionist.
Well,
He still got it.
When you're a star, they let you do it.
That's right.
So you think we're past the point of concern for civil war, even though the youngest generations who will eventually move into positions of power are more likely to say there will be a civil war?
I think the youngsters like to fetishize civil war, and everybody thinks if civil war happened, their ideology is what's going to happen after the fact. But we saw so many of the jump-off points. If it was the election of Donald Trump that would have caused a civil war, it would have already happened.
Well,
We've
what if
already
the
had the
Republicans
first
field
go-around.
someone who is more intense than Donald Trump next time?
But why wouldn't it be this election?
Because I think you already know what you're getting with Trump. So to try to call Trump a fascist doesn't hit as hard this time as it did last time, because you already know what you're getting. And there's also this fascism fatigue where after I call you a fascist for 10 years straight, it just doesn't hit as hard. People know Trump isn't a racist.
So I actually view that differently too. So they say that if you have a toothache and you do nothing and it goes away, you're in trouble. You know why? It means the infection's gotten bad to the point where the nerve's dead and the infection is spreading.
Shit, I gotta go.
Right. And so my view is what you're saying is we've gotten to the point where the left still says you're a fascist, but you just don't care anymore. That actually shows the polarization.
They still care,
though. The polarization is ossified. It is now fact. You cannot be swayed. It is done. We have solidified the hyperpartisan polarization.
Well, here's the thing about this I think that we're missing, because I think everybody's made really good points. The fact that we are having a serious and reasonable debate as to whether or not civil war is going to happen should be a major sign that there's an increased risk other than relative to normal times.
Well, look. Outside of any of this conversation, whether you trust academics or not, you've got academics on the left, the right, the center, national security, and foreign
Trust the science.
saying that the United States is in the civil strife period. If to better understand that, think Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas is when John Brown and his kids went and started murdering people, blasting them in the face with guns.
Sure.
This is the precursor to the Civil War.
Have we been in civil strife before, other than the Civil War, where we've healed from it? Like academic states of civil strife?
You're saying yes, Serge? We've been in civil strife and we've recovered from it?
Like maybe 1963 before the Civil Rights Act? I'm just trying to think if there's examples.
I don't think
Reconstruction. That was post-Civil War.
I don't know that was civil strife.
During segregation?
So after
the Civil Rights Movement?
But the issue with civil strife right now is Donald Trump wins, they say he's a Russian spy.
Right.
Joe Biden wins, they say he stole the 2020 election. And now we're facing another election with hyperpolarization, hyperpartisanship, violence, and no one willing to accept the other side is playing fairly.
There's not a path of de-escalation.
There's also
because civil rights and stuff were bad, but people still generally followed the government, and there were elections, and it was just there were protests, and it was I think they would refer to that as civil unrest. Civil strife is the combination of those things with a destabilization in politics. And there's death and things like this.
Trump is such a unique figure that a lot of things that occur around him are unprecedented, which adds to this sense of chaos. First person to be served so many of these papers, to have so many lawsuits brought against him.
Over 90 now, I think.
Former sitting president. Yeah, so all of this unprecedented. A lot of things that Trump did
Sure,
unprecedented.
but it was
which is
unprecedented in
what-
2017. It didn't feel like we were about ready to have civil war. I mean, he was still very
Sure.
unprecedented.
And then the 2 times impeachment. I mean, Teflon Don, they really can't get him with a thing. I never had any faith, not that I wanted it to happen, but the Democrats never had any chance with this lawsuit in the beginning. You cannot get Donald Trump. All of these cases, the Mar-a-Lago case. Anyway, Tim.
I just asked ChatGPT because that's the foremost expert, right? But we'll just say yes, the civil rights movement, it does consider civil strife. The Revolutionary War, Shays Rebellion, the Whiskey Rebellion, the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the Civil Rights Movement were considered civil strife, according to Khan Academy, Thought Co., and the Senate.
Hey, I'm glad I got that one, +1. Yeah, no, I hear those were very turbulent times.
Well, but I do feel like some of the things that you've referenced as well, we could have had civil war, but we didn't, feel like precursors to civil war to me. Not that we are definitely going to have one, but like with Roe v. Wade, there was a lot of protest. I mean, think of all of the doxings of the Supreme Court justices, the protests that were there, all the threats made to churches or abortion centers or pregnancy centers. It's not that like nothing happened, and maybe you're right, like it boiled to a point and it wasn't enough to tip to a civil war, but I don't think that underlying tension ever went away. There wasn't anything to distract from it. There wasn't a period of like, oh, actually, even with our attentions turning to more international conflicts with Ukraine, with Israel, Palestine, yes, there were some people who then sort of made that their focus in terms of political argument, but it never alleviated the cultural tension that we have in America because we are so far from the periods of time in which we had a collective national identity.
I think a big thing worth mentioning here again is that in America, again, Americans have so many different freedoms. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment. I think it says a lot to how good-willed American people are to not abuse those rights, right? Because if you're a person who is a radical on abortion, you had the opportunity when Roe v. Wade was overturned to do something very stupid and illegal and be a vigilante and say,
and some did.
Not with like gangs of armed people going around.
You don't think all of the threats to the Supreme Court justices don't count as vigilantism?
I don't think it was like
One
a
of the
John
man was
Brown.
arrested with,
I don't think it was like a John Brown
plans
type
to-
thing, which could hypothetically happen given people's rights. I think there was the Jane's Revenge, like that small anarchist or anarchist group that was
they were
firebombing a couple of
firebombing conservative pregnancy centers.
Yeah, that was definitely very bad.
And
but
then
it
they
didn't,
just
Sure.
disappeared. Like I get that we didn't tip then. I'm
And then
just
on
saying
the other side of the
nothing
approach,
ever went
life
made it
people
go away.
too, they are not extremely radical.
The
John
problem with
Brown
the abortion
style.
issue is that you can still get an abortion in the United States. Now, if the federal government just made it illegal to get any abortion ever after conception, I would think, okay, maybe that's going to be a Civil War-like level issue. But the fact you can still get one just by flying or driving to another state, it's just not.
I don't think
big
abortion's
enough.
the issue because babies can't defend themselves the way slaves could.
Right,
So with
right.
the Civil War, slavery being the catalyst was because slaves had escaped and then went to the North and said, hey, I want help. There were abolitionists in the North. There were former slaves. Former slaves were advocating for the end of it because they experienced it. And there were many slaves who weren't advocating for it. Famously, Harriet Tubman said, I freed many slaves. I would have freed many more if only they knew they were slaves. Babies can't do that. And people who survive abortions mostly don't have an experience of what that's like. They might know that the parents considered it, tried it, or whatever.
Who tells their kid that?
I tried to abort you. Like,
Yes. Yeah, of course. There's people who
You were
experience that.
unwanted, but we're glad that you're with us.
I
There
understand
are
your
failed
mistake,
abortions.
but not. We tried to go through with it, and
Can
it
we throw
didn't
some
work.
images up of some failed abortions?
That's just regular people.
what comes up? It's like the Goonies.
I mean, I think the big
Hey,
issue
guys.
is like the fact that we have strife culturally and socially. Like, I don't know if it'll be one issue. I think ultimately it's that we have people who do not feel united as one thing. Like, I think you're right. We
I
have
agree
all
with that.
kinds
We
of-
have lost American culture.
Right.
The
we
melting
have all
pot's
kinds
gone
of
because
privileges. We have all kinds of rights. But if half of the country believes that and the other half is like, no, we hate it here and it's the worst
Right.
and we're systemically oppressed and everything's bad. Like, these are people operating in very different worlds who occupy the same geographic space. Of course there'll be tension. It's just a question of like, what does this result in and what does a modern civil war look like? I don't know. Maybe
like we
people
can't
will
even
fight
agree
this
as a
through.
country anymore if success is a good thing. Like, there is a significant portion of people that would say that if you're successful, it's because you exploited or you took something.
Mm-hmm.
That used to be just like a staple of Americanism, that if you started at the bottom and made your way to the top and you were a millionaire, which
Right.
was the billionaire 100 years ago,
That idea
was
that, like,
awesome.
if you
right?
work hard, you can achieve things.
Yes.
There's a whole faction of a narrative right
It's
now that is
racist
like,
to believe that.
you can work as hard as you want, but you will always be oppressed. Like,
Right.
that's a very different experience than having a shared culture.
Let me pull up this story from the Daily Mail. We'll talk about this. 13 conservative counties in Oregon approved ballot measure for secession vote that would see them join non-woke Idaho as they issue list of demands. So there's a long path before they actually get to do anything like this. Idaho has to agree, Oregon has to agree, and then Congress has to agree, and I think the president has to sign off on it. That's never going to happen. But I guess the interesting thing here is that they're trying to make it happen. At least where they are, they agree it should happen. The question is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it is better that people are represented by the government that they believe is of, for, and by them. And if they feel like they're being oppressed by Oregon's woke psychotic policies and tax law and stuff like this, they have every right to change the nature of government. That's basically the founding of this country. But I wonder if polarizing in this way would actually just exacerbate tension between states.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that last part. I don't think we should be trying to split people up based on politics. I think this is only going to lead to more hyperpolarization, and I think that's what we're going to see here. I think the political consequences on the state level is going to be dramatic as well. I think both are going to have supermajorities of the. I think Oregon's going to be a Democrat supermajority, and then Idaho's going to probably have a Republican state majority. And I don't know. I don't think we should be redrawing the lines based on our political parties. So.
I think it's hard when you have, like, I think of Western Maryland versus, like, three counties in Western Maryland wanted to join West Virginia, right? Western Maryland represents or is much more similar to rural West Virginia, probably just because it's not as development, than Baltimore and the suburbs of Baltimore. So I could understand where you're like, hey, we have developed economically and geographically so that we don't actually have anything in common. We are under the same flag as a state, but you operate in a way that serves this part of the state and we don't feel any of the benefits. I could understand where then you would say, like, we experience the same challenges as this county and the other state that's right next to us. We want to be with them. I think you're right. You will see interstate tension if states were divided like this. Like, the prime example for this one is Idaho and Washington. The governors of Idaho and Washington have handled all kinds of issues incredibly differently. I mean, in terms of like sanctuary states for transgender identifying children, or laws governing if you can take a minor out of state to get an abortion. You know, they are kind of constantly messaging back and forth saying, like, hey, people who feel oppressed by that side, come here, or people who feel like this side has drifted too far to a progressive extreme, come here. And so maybe you would see a natural migration, but ultimately you have very, very different narratives sitting right on the same side of the line.
We shouldn't be annexing left and right with these states. We should be annexing up. Idaho should be annexing up, and so should Oregon.
Take Canada?
Take parts of Canada. Yeah, I think Alberta is right above Idaho. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we should be taking chunks of, not of each other. I don't know what we're achieving here.
See, but I think that there is I think because we live in this era where, like, oh, these are the state boundaries and this is the way they are, we feel that way. But I don't think it's against anyone's right to say, like, hey, I don't think my government represents me. You know, I have economic issues, or I have, you know, challenges that the very urbanized capital doesn't experience. Like, why wouldn't you then say, I think I'm more similar?
These are all very rural areas that were dominated by Oregon's very liberal coastal area.
Right.
So, you know, they were like, we're never winning anything here. We don't have much representation. But again, we're just getting further politically divided in that way. And I guess politics is also relative. So we'll see how some of the blue dog Democrats in Oregon fare. So. And
it would affect everything. I mean, it would affect how many congressional seats they have. It would affect their census votes. I mean, it would really change things if
I doubt they have a lot of people. I bet these are all really, like, low populated counties.
Think how populated that is compared to the rest of Idaho. Like, would Idaho gain because they take in this population? Obviously, it's better than you couldn't import people fast enough. This would be way faster. I mean, the birth rates in all of these states especially affect this. But do I think it's going to happen? It's very unlikely. I mean, in the case, again, I'm going to go back to the thing I know more about, which is Western Maryland. Basically, West Virginia was like, sure, we'd love to have you. Go talk to Baltimore. And Baltimore was like, no, thank you. You're staying right here because we
own you.
Yeah.
Because you give us money and resources. We ain't giving that up.
Yeah. And I think that's what ultimately will happen here. I mean, it's interesting to see, though, and I think it's good for them to try. I think this is what good local governments do for their citizens. Say, like, we aren't represented.
It wouldn't change the number of members of Congress. It wouldn't change the number of senators.
It'll change the state representation of, like, I guess the parts that are being annexed by Idaho will now be represented by Republicans instead of Democrats on the state level.
Let me ask you guys.
The conservative area. How many members of let's pull up the congressional map for Oregon.
And I'm saying I think it would be even more significant on like the state government level, like their state legislature is where I think it would be most significant for them.
So,
All the
yeah, it's Republican.
east side
It's all Republican.
yeah.
So if
but
that-
it's just one district.
Exactly. So if that one district joined Idaho, you got one Republican, probably the same guy, and then the amount of senators don't change.
I'm saying the majorities in the state Senate. So like right now for their state legislature,
right.
the East Coast is irrelevant, but now it will be Republican with
Yeah, you know,
Republican
honestly,
supermajority in their state level.
that could lead to extreme hyperpolarization, because Oregon may be constrained a little bit by the somewhat Republican influence of the eastern the eastern counties. The West, without any constraint at all, would just drive off the liberal cliff.
Yeah, I don't want. I mean, I live in New York. I don't want any of upstate New York to start being grabbed by any states there. Like, you could argue this stuff for a lot of states. I feel like so outside of cities in the more rural areas.
You don't want like upstate New Hampshire and Vermont and New York State to form a coalition.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's not really red. New York's probably the reddest area in the Northeast, but I feel like a lot of states could do this. Most rural areas are more Republican compared to the cities. So.
What do you think's gonna happen to Texas? Because you're in Austin, right? Austin's gotten pretty blue over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I love this show and I've loved this conversation, but I do not give a fuck about this. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm not even trying to be aggressive or abrasive or anything. I just don't think it's gonna happen. Maybe it'll happen. It's like the Texas secession thing, like you just brought up too. I like the idea that a state can split away or join another state. I like the idea that the people can be represented by a different state if they want to and decide through a legal process to do it. But at this point, it's like it's not gonna fucking happen. I don't fucking care. You know?
Well, yeah, of course it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
and that's the first thing I said.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with you.
The question is, would it be good governance to allow states to dictate their borders?
Okay.
And
that's a good question. It probably would be good governance, in my opinion.
Because we're seeing more and more of it, especially in the Pacific Northwest with the state of Jefferson, which could be Northern California as its own.
It deeply troubles me the reasons that shit like this doesn't happen. Because congressional members are worried about shifting demographics and districts, and because it's about gerrymandering and whether or not it's going to increase or decrease congressional seats. Like, that bothers me, but it's like not going to happen. So I don't know. It's like when I see this type of thing in the paper, it's like the Joe Rogan bit. Next.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I think ultimately the fact that there are coalitions of people who are saying we are deeply unhappy speaks to what we were talking about
and if
before.
Texas voted to secede and it became like a war, I would sign up. I mean, I would do it, but I'm not like...
But I think there's a big difference between counties being like, we want to be represented by another state. This won't affect the federal makeup in any way.
It's not secession, you're right.
Right, and so the reason I bring this up specifically is that you've got California and Texas who have their secessionist movements that want to leave the entirety of the country.
Cal exit and Texit.
But then you have the lesser of, how about instead of breaking the country apart, we just find better representation at the state and local level?
Right. Well, I'm not opposed to the notion that this should be allowed to happen. I guess...
Yeah, three Western Maryland counties wrote letters saying they wanted to secede from the state and join West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And then there's, I believe...
They'll change the tax revenue makeup a lot, so the legislatures locally will be upset about that if they're going to lose counties.
I don't know. It's true. Maryland's like, we're going to lose how much money if we do this?
Right.
However, I don't know how much money Maryland actually generates from the western counties.
Well,
they may actually spend more than they make.
Probably generate more than they spend, because I bet you most of the resources go to the urban areas. So when you lose revenue, even though it's even though it's an inexpensive part of the state, it negatively probably impacts the more urban areas disproportionately.
Maybe, but I don't know that in the rural areas enough is going on to generate any kind of revenue. Majority of the revenue is typically generated in the urban areas. That being said, I don't know what Baltimore's generating. Baltimore's got high crime. You know, people don't want to go there. It's kind of sad. You've got the Horseshoe Casino up in Baltimore, and when you go there, every 10 feet there's a sign saying something like "You are safe" or something like this.
I don't like it that they have to tell you that.
Which probably means
it's very
you're not.
stressful.
If I saw a sign that said "You are safe," I'd be like, "Shit, where's my gun?"
Well, you know, you're in Baltimore, so you can't have one. And then if you go further south, you have Maryland Live, and then actually just recently at MGM in DC, someone got robbed again and like stabbed or something. So,
but who was it?
Some old guy at
Democrat
MGM.
or Republican?
Normie probably.
I think the issue with Baltimore is that between Boston, New York, Philly, Baltimore, and DC. Baltimore is the worst one of the five of all these 5 cities next to each other, relatively so. Why would you ever stop there?
What's the demographic makeup?
In
Are you
Baltimore?
racist?
I'm not sure what is it? You
I
sound
thought
like
you
you
say
know.
I'm not sure if I'm racist.
It sounds like you know the
I'm just fucking with you, man. I'm trying to ask difficult questions.
So I want to pull up this. I'm going to pull up this tweet here.
Ooh, how did Iditarod do?
Oh no! Wait. What is this? This is not what I'm trying to pull up. I'm trying to pull up this. So we have this tweet from Roz Alerts. China military have begun drills surrounding the entirety of Taiwan, including the islands of Kinmen and Dongyin, state media says. I don't know what the update is on this. This was an hour ago that this story broke. A lot of people are saying, holy crap, things are starting to light up. But we do have this story as well. From SCNR, Russia launches tactical nuclear drills near Ukraine. Analysts say the exercises are meant to send a clear message to the West. So what's going on, Elad?
Before we
Nothing?
get into that, Chase, Mr. Populist, I wanted to ask, what is the populist response to if China attacks Taiwan? How does America respond?
In my opinion,
The populist.
In my opinion, and I can't speak for all of populism or populists, but in my opinion, the populist response is we shouldn't give a fuck about any of these countries except our own country, and we should put America first. So all the money that we print in order to spend on defending Taiwan from threats like China only serves to weaken our working class and our people. It's not an America first policy, so it's not a populist policy. In my opinion.
I think in the surrounding seas around Taiwan, the South China Sea, around like 50% of world trade, world GDP trade goes through there. So
well,
there
it's
would
too
be
bad that we allowed ourselves to be so dependent on Chinese manufacturing, so we got to the point where this was a problem for us. If we were actually populist, we wouldn't have fucked ourselves by outsourcing slavery to China, and we'd be manufacturing our own prescription drugs, our own products instead of importing them from China. So that's also the anti-populist problem.
Are we also populistly abandoning our allies in Japan and Korea? South Korea as well?
Fuck yeah. Fuck Ukraine. Fuck Israel. Fuck Russia.
You know,
fuck Palestine. Fuck
you
Taiwan.
missed I was talking
fuck
about the
them
ones in
We
the
usually-
Pacific.
all
not
of
the
them.
Ukraine.
I think you've sworn more than anyone's ever sworn on
I'm
the show
sorry.
before.
You want me to cut it out?
We usually don't swear. And
You didn't tell me that before the show. I would have watched it.
Well, we usually tell people like we try not to swear because people have kids watching, but I
Oh,
think you've
sorry.
said it like 70 times. So at
sorry.
this point, I'm just gonna be like,
Oh, I'll genuinely apologize for that.
I'm not really mad or anything. I'm like,
I know. I don't think you're
at a
mad.
certain point,
I'm
I'm
just
like,
genuinely
maybe I should-
apologizing to you. I didn't make you uncomfortable.
I
no, you're
understand
good.
you're passionate about the issues too,
Yeah.
because a lot of people think that we shouldn't have any involvement. So,
So
I don't.
to hell with these people.
Heck.
we just get emails from people because they'll play the show with their kids in the living room or in their
See,
car.
the thing with me is I'm on InfoWars and we're on radio, so you can't swear because it's against the law. And so whenever I come on podcasts, I'm like, finally I can say
feel
the F word.
liberated?
So I
Yeah.
strongly
Turns out.
disagree.
Sometimes I
It's not
overcompensate,
F these
so I'm
countries.
sorry
It's
about
I
that.
love South Korea. I love Japan. I love Taiwan.
I love them too, but not
Israel,
as much as America. Like I love women, but I only sleep with my wife.
of course, but I think it's
I
important.
didn't use the F word.
That's right.
For our allies not to be overrun by communists in the case of China, in the Asian Pacific, or
I-
Islamists in the case of the Middle East.
You know,
or-
I am sick and tired of all of this funding for all this war, and we're not giving enough funding to Korea.
South Korea.
You know, like why are we giving money to Israel or Taiwan or Ukraine? We should be funding Korea.
We give troops to South Korea.
We should be giving.
Not
We have
enough, according
30.
to
I
we have
want
like
200 billion.
30,000.
I want $200 sent to South Korea. You know, because North Korea is a real threat to this country. They have a nuclear. They're working on nuclear weapons, and you know we got the real risk of war with North Korea. So we should
I
just
think
give
we should
everything
only
to
focus
South
on
Korea.
our allyship with England, not even Scotland and Wales, just England only.
We've had
I
millions-
personally, in Canada, another great country in my opinion. As soon
Yeah,
as
like
Justin
why are we
Trudeau
giving money
goes-
to Israel or Ukraine or Taiwan or any other country for that matter when South Korea is the real important country?
I think we've had millions of brave, heroic patriots fight against the communists in China in the Korean War, and I hope the conflict doesn't break out again.
A lot will not
I
be
just want
deterred.
to let everybody know, I'm joking, by the way. I don't think we should be funding any of it or be involved in any capacity.
I don't think we should
a
be involved at
populist.
all. But again, because I have, genetic ties to two countries, I have a favoritism
Genetic
for them. I'm happy to
ties.
admit it.
You,
Because
you
I've-
favor your own genetics?
Because
Yeah,
I've
I
seen
do,
it.
and
Would you say they're superior?
Whoa.
Because I've seen all these
Fed.
people where it's like, you'll hear someone and they'll be like, we shouldn't be funding Ukraine, and you'll be like, what about Israel? And they'll go, well, hold on there, you
Yeah,
know, that's
not me.
different. And so I was just like, before the show, I was like, maybe I should just have that, but for Korea. Like all of a sudden, just for some reason, be a neocon when it comes to South Korea?
It's
think
interesting
that'd be a great
because
position
many
to
of the
take.
people in Congress, the Republicans who are anti-Ukraine funding, are still very pro-Taiwan funding and
Right.
are hawkishly anti-China, which I'm thankful for, but
Isn't
it's just hypocritical on that
even,
point.
Even Tulsi Gabbard, I think, too, right? Like, wasn't she critical of Ukraine but supportive of Israel funding?
It'd be cool if
maybe on
everyone took the
Israel.
same
Yeah, but
policy,
she was
which is
very quiet about Israel for like 6 months.
Tulsi
And
said
I
she
looked it up on
wouldn't
Twitter.
want America to defend China doesn't want America to defend Taiwan in the case of a Chinese attack, is what she said. But like,
I
you have people
also-
like J.D. Vance who are hawkishly
Why do I don't-
anti-CCP, but not
I don't care about
pro-Ukraine funding.
Like, dude,
apparently
like,
the superconductors are really important. It's like make them
and
somewhere
you know,
else.
we build them
in
here.
America, perhaps.
Yes, yeah,
a great
exactly.
idea. I agree with you. I think the priority should be our country first, and I can understand where we have geopolitical relationships. But to be fair, I think America makes kind of a mess of everything they do on the international stage,
Agreed.
especially right
How
now.
much better
If
off is
we
Iraq and Afghanistan
allow-
because we got involved in protecting their democracy?
If we allow our democratic allies in Taiwan to fall,
We have no democratic allies.
Japan and South Korea wouldn't have faith in us coming to defense, and then nuclear proliferation will be a huge issue. Nuclear proliferation is an issue, but not because our enemies are getting atomic weapons. It's because of our allies wanting atomic weapons when they feel threatened, and we don't want to come and assist them in their defense. So, if Taiwan falls, the first thing South Korea is going to want is a nuclear weapon. Same with Japan. The less we aid Ukraine, the more they will want a nuclear weapon in the future. One of the original reasons they disarmed their nuclear arsenal originally was because we would defend them in case of an attack.
Didn't
But-
Poland just offer to house our nuclear weapons if we wanted to put them there? I mean, like, I get what you're saying. On the other hand, I don't think it changes my position. I think ultimately we didn't do a good job of inserting ourselves into the world internationally. And in fact, we hurt the American economy by shipping manufacturing overseas, which we said was going to help local economies or do whatever else. Like, this is not the way to help everybody by saying, well, everyone's going to be dependent on us all the time, especially when the people who are actually dependent on us, American citizens, feel as though we've left a gashing hole in the border, and also all of them are worried about how to pay for their bills at the end of the month. I mean, if we are in charge of one population, the American people, they should feel like they are doing really well before we start saying, okay, here's what we're going to promise the rest of the world. We can't even come through on promises that we have for our own voters. Why would we say, yes, you can depend on us for all these kinds of things? No worries.
I absolutely agree. And if we really think China's a threat and that we should stand up against the CCP if they attack Taiwan, then why is it that we're giving them so many millions and billions of dollars
Do you
to
not think
make all of our
China,
products?
the communist Chinese government, is a threat to American hegemony and American interests writ large?
That's a difficult question for me to answer. Yes or no. I would say that China is a competitor, but not a threat. And I think anytime China has been or will be a threat will be because we've probably induced that threat. I have a problem with the CCP spying on us through TikTok less than I have a problem on our government extending FISA to spy on us. So it's going to try to ban TikTok because spying on the American people is something only our enemies do in the same 10 days that it passes legislation to spy on us. Like our own government, the greatest threat to national security in America is the government of the United States.
there's a
it
material
is the
difference-
number one enemy of the American
There's a
people.
material difference between our government spying on us, which again I don't think is
What
great,
material
versus,
difference? Quantify it.
versus the Chinese government.
Quantify it.
So we actually can monitor our government to a certain aspect.
No, we
We
can't.
have, there's a Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah, Edward Snowden
and-
came out and said that the government was spying on us, and that's a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. And the only person that got arrested for it or charged with any crimes for it was Edward Snowden.
So we still live in a democracy where we have
no, we
influ-
don't. First of all, it never says
all right.
democracy once in the Constitution. Second of all, even if it did, this isn't
We live in a
democratic.
representative democracy where your votes matter,
constitutional
and we
republic.
elect officials, and
You
that
think
doesn't
the-
happen
I
in
guess-
China. So I think that's the material difference. Also, we're a country based on the Constitution and freedoms, and China is a country based on communism.
You
So
think that the United
I think
States,
that's materially
as it
different.
is today, you think that the United States is based off of the Constitution as it is today?
I still think we have the First and Second Amendment, and I think that's something you don't have in communist China. And
Yeah,
again,
it's
if you don't
that's
see
like
the
when
difference
Cersei
between those
Lannister-
two,
it's
How
a-
many
I feel
states were you allowed to own a gun in 1980?
I don't know.
I think it was like probably 2.
You were only allowed to own a gun in the United States. in
Gun
2
rights,
states.
the right to keep and bear arms outside of your home really came into effect with DC versus Heller in 2008.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, George Carlin got arrested for swearing at a comedy club.
God,
Yeah,
imagine what would have happened to me.
We had blasphemy laws a couple hundred years ago. you could get arrested.
Yeah. So do you think that the United States is a country based off of the
I think
Constitution?
we're a lot more free than any other
Frederick
country.
Douglass famously challenged the American people
agree
to
with that.
live up
I
to the
agree with that.
document.
I think
I
it's
agree with that.
dangerous
I'll give
also
you
to
that.
like both sides are government with communist regimes like that. But
The United States, I believe, has a problem.
You're probably right about that too.
We have a problem with corruption in government, and it is not nearly as bad as most
Right.
like the CCP.
Like the
is,
White Pill by Michael Mouse. I mean, that was basically the whole point of that book.
Yeah, the
How much
CCP
worse
is
it could get.
infinitely worse than the establishment.
I agree.
The establishment.
But there's something
we might
particularly
defeat-
egregious about a government betraying its own people that is it's just not the same when another government does it.
This is the issue, right? So we are what's referred to academically as a liberal democracy. It depends on the institutions you have within it if you want to get to the nitty gritty. So we're a constitutional republic with democratically elected representatives.
Yes.
Countries like this, because it largely does, at least in some degree, seek to have input from the people, are referred to as liberal democracies in that capacity.
Right.
We can FOIA request, as Elad mentioned. We can file lawsuits, and we win. The reason why I'm in favor of the TikTok divestment bill is because, for one, it's not really a ban.
Right.
TikTok could still operate. You can go to TikTok.us. It'll still exist. It just won't be on different servers outside of the country. But it won't be on iPhones. It could be on Android. So
It's kind of a ban.
this is the challenge.
I mean, it's like saying that Alex Jones didn't get banned because he could still have his own servers. I mean, technically, he was legally allowed to operate, but the impact is so...
Alex Jones got banned from YouTube.
Yes.
The divestment bill
So
would
TikTok's
ban
going to get
TikTok.
banned from Apple?
It would be banned from U.S. servers.
if they don't sell,
But,
they have
but,
the
but,
option.
but my
Kind of
point is,
banned.
if they don't divest, and so it's not even selling, it's selling 1% of the company, which they refuse to do, and they're going to lay people off. When it comes to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., we filed FOIA requests, we filed lawsuits, we won.
Yes.
Elon Musk bought X, released
Yes.
a bunch of documents. You
Yes.
can't do that with TikTok.
Yes. You're right.
The United States has problems. We're actually fighting a culture war, and in many ways, we're winning. Target's abandoning their Pride section. Bud Light panicked. They didn't give us everything they wanted. They didn't apologize, but they did still start backtracking. And then you've got Donald Trump, the front runner, right now to win in November. That doesn't mean we've won, but this doesn't exist in China.
Okay. Fair enough.
So it's like with all the problems we have, the
But
price
the
of
original
freedom
question was
is
whether or
eternal
not the
vigilance.
CCP was a threat.
Yes,
You think it's
Massively.
a threat to the United States of America?
I absolutely do,
specifically. And what,
100%.
can you be a little bit more specific about what
Well,
that means?
what-
Because that's threat's a very broad stroke term.
yeah. Like what in
So,
what
like,
in
do
what
you-
area?
do you
So
mean like,
we can talk
do you
about
mean
TikTok,
like
for
military?
instance.
Do you mean like military? Do you mean culturally? I mean,
All of
in
it.
what ways are the
China's strategy, China's efforts, China's end goals involve the destruction and the end of the United States.
like the 100-year plan?
I don't know about I don't know necessarily if you want to get into that, but I can tell you this: militaristically, of course, and obviously, the expansion into the South China Sea in violation of international treaties could destabilize the region and could seriously impact our allies, our resources, etc. Now, that being said, I'm more America first. I like to keep things, here in the United States. We're going to have international relations. We're going to have trade. I don't care to go to war over Taiwan. But the expansion of the military and building atoll bases in South China Sea and then sending strike groups near Hawaii and Alaska is putting pressure on our boundaries and our territory. TikTok is the best example of China directly assaulting the United States. TikTok becomes massively popular in the United States and starts sending weird woke garbage to children.
It definitely brainwashed an
And
entire
it-
generation of our people, 100%.
That means in 20, 30 years, when these people who are brainwashed are in industry, it's gonna be like putting look, you call it a mind virus. It is a social mind virus in our society, which is going to economically and physically damage us and already did. And that's why I'm like, TikTok must be assessed and held accountable in whatever mean appropriate. I'm not going to give Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or any other platform a free pass on this one. But if you look at X, we've got some solutions there. Not only did we have FOIA lawsuit, we had FOIA federal government's communications with Facebook and Twitter, which we learned.
Yep.
We had Alex Berenson's lawsuit against Twitter, and then we learned they were coordinating with government. We were able to fight those battles, and we've won many of them. And we're still facing serious challenges.
But since TikTok is operated by the CCP and it's outside the jurisdiction of the United States, there's
We
no
can do
way to
nothing.
FOIA it. There's no way to litigate it to see what they're doing to
and
spy
it
and
is
manipulate
and
algorithms.
it is China attacking us, causing us harm to our nation, the fabric of this country, to destroy it. They're buying up land. And the government is allowing it to happen.
I have a problem with that too.
There's a risk for China in that regard because the government could nationalize that in a second and China would lose their minds. China's also been attacking our cyber infrastructure for 2 decades.
Yes.
You can actually track the cyber attacks that are low scale and watch them in real time on various websites where you can see what I would describe as Chinese Corsair hackers, effectively pirates in the modern era, that are under commission. I forgot the name of the group. There was one famous group. The way it works is China will indirectly provide funding to hacker groups in China, and they'll be like, you have free reign to commit any crime you want as long as it's against the United States and Europe.
Right.
So these people within Chinese borders are stealing money. Look at the phone calls you get every day. You ever notice those phone calls where it's just like weird Mandarin phone calls? Mm-hmm. Understand that in modern warfare, what China is looking to do is maximize friction without engaging in physical conflict. So something as simple as getting a phone call may seem innocuous. But if their math is, hey, if we do 100,000 phone calls to random phones in the United States every day, our estimates are that we could slow economic activity by 0.02%.
So the interruption is the attack.
And it's meaningless to you as an individual, but when you scale it up to 300 million people, you can actually measure the economic activity that someone's in the middle of a meeting and their phone rings and they stop to check it. That in one meeting is meaningless to you as an individual, but that adds up in a long run. These are all meant to destabilize the United States. They're actively doing it. And the challenge is China's strategy is the I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. So they're doing these things. I will say outright, TikTok is a psychological warfare. It's psychological warfare on the United States, targeting our youth so that in 20 years, we are... I'm sorry, did you see the video of the guy on the aircraft carrier putting on makeup and then thrusting his hips around? This is our military that is now more focused on doing drag shows than on defending this nation. They're putting DEI policy to effect. Why? Because of what China is doing. Not only that, with TikTok, they say you've got 175 million active users in the United States, and large portions of them are businesses. Since when did we agree to allow the CCP to control economics in any capacity in this country? And then you've got people who are like, no, don't ban TikTok. And I'm like, why? It's China attacking the United States militaristically. So China is a massive threat. They're a bigger threat than the things that are happening in this country that we can actually fight against. We would not be having the Bud Light conversation at all. There would be no Bud Light conversation if it were not for the CCP attacking our young people.
So the CCP literally ruined Bud Light.
Yes.
You
Those
might
were all
not be
great
thinking
points.
about
I'm not
war
even gonna
with
argue
them, but they're definitely thinking about war with you.
Well, I definitely believe that the CCP is a threat in the sense that it wants to subvert the dollar as the global reserve currency. But part of the way you do that is by getting the United States involved in all these international conflicts, so they have to print money to fund it.
They teach, in China, they teach that our values, our American values, are antithetical to their values. They see our democracy as a weakness. They see free speech as an opportunity to just cause chaos. They see the Second Amendment as giving people too much individual
You gotta keep
rights.
in mind, I'm no fan of the CCP. Here's the reason that I was so eager to say that I didn't think China was a threat, and it was probably a little rash of me. Okay, the reason I was so eager is because when something happens in Taiwan, all of the neocons are going to just hype up how much of a threat the CCP is to justify sending billions and billions of dollars or escalating the conflict. And that's why I hate saying things like, yes, China's a threat, or yes, China's an enemy, even though it's probably true. You guys both made excellent points. So I can see that. I'm not trying to be difficult here, but I just hate the way that's used and abused by the right and the left to justify funding Israel and then giving aid simultaneously to the Palestinians and then funding Ukraine and then funding Taiwan. I mean, it just seems like we're always wrapped up in war after war because everybody's a threat. Always. Yep. And it seems like we make the threats up just so we can fund the conflicts half the time. And I'm just pushing back against that. That's all.
Well, in terms of Russia, Ukraine, Israel, it's their threats to us in the sense of there is an elite group of military-industrial complex goons who have enacted foreign policy plans, and their plans are being threatened. So, in essence, not really a threat to the United States as a nation, unless you really just want to live off the petrodollar.
Right.
I'll tell you the reality is this. If America First got its utopian vision, you'd probably work 12 hours a day. Maybe that's a little rough. You'd work. No, I think 12's fair.
Well, if you're doing what you love.
I don't know if it would be love, but people need to understand that Yeah, we don't really manufacture a lot relative to what we consume and produce here.
Right.
We
Basically just make food. That's
Yeah.
that's like our main export.
and culture. And the principal issue is that so long as the U.S. is forced to use the dollar, our dollar has values, and we have unlimited oil, basically. So we are constrained in that we can't just take all the oil and do whatever we want with it. There's limits because the Saudis can dump oil and flood the market and affect the petrodollar. But you've got countries that have to produce enough exports so that their currency is stable against the dollar, so they can trade for it to get oil. The U.S. doesn't have to do that.
Right.
The U.S. and the Federal Reserve will just make money when they feel like spending it, and they'll debase the currency and then hope no one does anything. So long as we have the guns pointed at everybody around the world, we don't have to worry about people getting mad that we just devalued the debt they were holding.
And what are you going to do about it?
Well, we're going to go to Super Chat. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com. Click join us at the website, become a member, and you'll get access to the uncensored call-in show coming up in about 20 minutes. So we'd love to hear from you guys as callers and as members. You make this all possible. If you believe we do a good job on this show, or you believe that we do a good enough job on this show and you want to see us do more, or if you hate us completely but like that we exist because you complain a lot in the comments, well, then you'd hate to see us go. Go to timcast.com, become a member, and then we can continue to exist. For without your support, we would not. Clint Torres is back. He says, howdy, people. Howdy, Clint. Welcome back. Token Black Guy in the second super chat saying, howdy, people. Phil, can I get a let's go? There is no Phil. There is only Elad.
Let's go. Is that what you would sound like?
You're almost going to be the lead singer of a metal band
Let's
now.
go.
All right. Igor Voiku says, first, hi, Tim. I know it's a long shot, but can I get a shout out on my first video on my channel? I was born in Ukraine, but I discussed my America First perspective on the Ukraine wars as a naturalized U.S. citizen. A shout out is worth more than $10,000. Is that what they say? I don't know. What is your channel called? Is it just Igor Voiku? Is that the name of your channel?
Igor?
Igor?
Igor.
I'm an Igor guy.
That's probably how it's
Yeah.
pronounced, yeah.
I'm assuming that's your channel, so everybody can search for it.
American First Ukrainian.
Aquafan says Biden off the ballot in Ohio. Aren't there some blue states giving all their electors to the winner of the popular vote? Ohio makes much easier for Trump to win the popular vote. That is not yet. So the National Popular Vote Coalition doesn't go into effect until they have more than 270 electoral votes. And I believe they should be sued as this is unconstitutional and shouldn't be allowed.
Another potential catalyst to civil war if that ever happens.
No,
Yeah.
but you said there's no civil war coming, so you
Yeah,
can't
but
take it back
we
now.
haven't hit that
no,
yet,
you
though.
said no.
We haven't hit the switching to
think-
the
Oh, now
popular
he's changing
vote.
his position.
I think we're
How
like
interesting.
210 electoral votes.
It's some amount of states, right, need to approve or say they're going to do it.
However, I will stress, this means California go Republican. It's like the weirdest idea ever. They're like, we're going to give all our votes to whoever won the popular vote. And it's like that means right now California will never give their electors to a Republican. But if you do this pact, it means they might.
You're like,
I
it's
guess.
a risk we're willing to take. Thank you so much.
Except when they're bringing in wave after wave of non-citizen and
Talk to
allowing
people
non-citizens
that
to
think
vote.
Trump won California in 2020. It's unbelievable to me. I lived there. It's miserable.
Max Reddick says, Tim, you should do a culture war episode with Destiny. Talk about J6. Whoa, what was that? Talk about
moonlighting.
J6, Trump cases, Biden family corruption, etc. It would be an epic show. I kind of feel like Destiny would engage in... I don't think that would be actual debate. Because Destiny's debate style is more based on like morality and purpose. And I would just say something like, Joe Biden did X. And he would go, well, okay, so what? And I'd be like, then we agree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Destiny's, I was talking with Destiny on the show before, and I said, during the lockdowns, Democrats were enacting these policies. And he goes, when else would they do them? And I said, touche.
So
It's
when,
like his-
when Destiny was in the debate with Krasensteins and Alex Jones at InfoWars, at the end, Alex went to shake everybody's hands, and he reached for Destiny's hand to shake his hand, and Destiny just looked at him and said, "I fucking hate you, man." And ever since then, I've been like, that guy's a fucking asshole.
Wow. Yeah.
Regardless of whether he's right or not, he's
What was
an asshole.
Jones's response?
He just moved on and shook the Krasenstein's hand like a gentleman.
Just ate it.
Yeah, he just smiled, He was having a great time that night. He's like, did I do good? I'm like, yeah, you did great. It was fun.
Cole Marshall says, did a 50-pound farmer's carry today. Going to start making fitness content to inspire more people. If If I was an old sub and resub to the website, can I join call-ins? Also favorite lifts. If you were already a member and you log into your account and re-up, you should still have all the same access, but I don't know for sure. You might have to, yeah, because your account is as old as your account is. So like, I'm pretty sure if you signed up today and then canceled next month and then like 8 months later re-signed up, you'd probably still have access. Yeah, okay, I think so. Because it's the age of the account, but I'm not sure. The reason we do the 6-month time gate, or you sign up for $10 a month, and then after 6 months you get access to the call-in room, or you sign up at $25 a month today, and you have instant access. It's because we had weirdos that were trying to come in and just causing problems. They were trying to overload the system and flood it so that it wasn't working properly, and so we were like, we have to have a gate. And apparently $25 is expensive enough to where people stop trying to come and cause problems. And it's like, you know, what are you going to do, I guess? Some people might wait 6 months and try, but they usually forget about it. Let's go. Shrek Donkey says furniture store in Houston area giving 50% discount if rep wins this year. Gallery Furniture is store name.
What was the promo? If who wins?
Republican.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, there you go.
I hope
Deal's
someone
so
who's
good
never
you'll turn
voted
red.
someone who's never voted for it goes to the polls and then vote Republican because I really want this discount. Like,
I love that chair.
I must get it on this % off.
All right. And Anarchy76 says, I've been watching almost every day for years. He's not here today, but I wanted to say I'm going to see Phil with Megadeth and Mudvayne on August 2nd in Rogers, Arkansas. My first All That Remains show. Excited. Keep up the good work. You know, I think All That Remains is better than Mudvayne and Megadeth.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it's, you know, but it's like All That Remains has got more, I feel like, melodic music. I don't know.
I definitely think it's better.
Yeah.
That being said, I've never listened to the other two ever, and I talk to Phil regularly all the time. I also really don't know any of Phil's music. I'll admit that on air right now.
I
But
also
he's a fun guy.
don't know any of Phil's music, but hearing this super chatter say he's going to one of his concerts makes me want to go. So maybe one day I'll steal Hannah Claire and we'll go to Phil's
We
concert.
should.
Shout out, Phil.
Yeah. All right. Anthony Shaw says the FBI clearing 126 rooms has nothing to do with classified documents. They were looking for a fight, looking for someone to shoot back at an unlawful entry into a hotel room. Imagine staying at a red roof inn and the door opens. What would you do? And it's Florida, where people have guns. This is what people need to understand about Mar-a-Lago. It's not like a house with one guy sitting in it. At any given moment, there's a ton of random people who are ordering from a restaurant. You go to Mar-a-Lago and you sit down and a waiter comes out and says, what would you like for breakfast? And he hands you a menu. It's a restaurant. It's a private club. You're hanging out at the pool, and it's Mar-a-Lago, so it's the lagoon, it's the lake to the ocean. You can be on the beach and then walk to the pool, and there are servers serving food. And then all of a sudden, you're in beach house. I stayed in the beach house. They're hotel rooms. They give you keys. You go in. That's literally what it is. I could not imagine if I was there and guys in plain clothes kick the doors in with guns drawn. Mm-hmm. It's insane.
And that was part of their instructions, right? To check every room.
Right.
I mean,
And when I went down to Eagle Pass to cover some of the border stuff going on, I mean, it was in Texas. In Texas, you can carry a gun anywhere, even if you don't have a license. And we all had guns, like multiple guns in our rooms. If somebody would have busted in the door, I'm not saying that I would have done this, but it would have been like one of the top two options on my mind. So I don't know what the laws are like in Florida. I'm pretty sure that you can just carry a gun, and technically
concealed carry without a permit is allowed. But
yeah, but
open
in your
carry is
hotel
not.
room, it probably counts as your residence.
And I think Mar-a-Lago's only weapon restriction is active Secret Service. Uh-huh. So I think even when Trump's not there, you can't have weapons on Mar-a-Lago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but in Florida, like Mar-a-Lago is split by a road, right? So this is actually, there's more than one property that has access over the road. And then there's a tunnel that goes under the road. So you can stay within the grounds of Mar-a-Lago, despite there being a road going through it. So I don't think anyone there outside of Trump's official security or whatever.
I see.
In fact, I don't even think his security might be armed.
Oh, they gotta be.
I don't know. Secret Services.
Yeah.
But when Trump's not there, they might be. I'm not sure. I think there's rules. Bongino was talking about this, that Secret Service doesn't want anyone else to have weapons because they want to be the only law enforcement with force capability in the event that there's something that happens.
Right.
They don't want any confusion. Yeah.
Monopoly on force. Secret Service.
Yep. Let's go. Nathan Strangle says, here's $50 for someone in need. Also love the show. Keep it the good fight. Rise with Roberto Jr. is the bee's knees. You know, it was initially, it was my favorite, Rise with Roberto Jr. And then Appalachian Nights just, man.
Was Stand Your Ground sold out the other day? I thought I saw that when you had the website pulled up.
Maybe.
What if it becomes the new favorite?
Maybe. When we first launched, Rise with Roberto Jr. was our signature, Roberto Jr., of course, the mascot. And then we didn't really sell that much Appalachian Nights. And I was just like, I like it. It's a dark roast. It's a blend that I came up with. And now we sell 10 times as much Appalachian Nights as anything else. So I was like, okay, that one. Ian's Graphene Dream is just, it's been 5 months backlogged for some reason. Yeah.
Did you ever pick the cat charity for Alex Stein's Primetime Grind?
Nope. But we will.
I can't even hear his name without laughing. That guy's so funny.
Yeah, so we have Alex Stein's Primetime Grind, 2 times caffeine coffee over at Cass Brew. And we got it on the list, finding a good cat charity and then announcing all that stuff. But I don't want to say too much because Alex is going to be here. So,
I got him to smoke a Lucky Strike on his show when I was on it.
He's going to be here tomorrow, actually, isn't he? Yeah, Alex is here tomorrow, so we may have something for you.
Cool.
Yeah, it was funny when we were like, we're going to sponsor your show, he was like, I will get a kiddie pool and I will fill it with coffee and swim in it. And I was like, oh, you can do whatever you want.
I mean, you could.
Yeah. It'll be the most fun commercial ever.
He's a good guy.
But so I think we recently re-upped. So we sponsor his show and then he promotes Cass Brew Coffee and in ways that probably a sane company would never allow. But that makes it more fun. You know what I mean?
He
Totally.
just wants an excuse to be in a two-piece, I think.
Yeah.
Two-piece?
Yeah. Like, I think he does
He
like...
did the tuck
goes
thing, right?
Yeah,
he
like
went
a
to Target
tuck,
and put on the tuck-friendly
You mean a one-piece?
bathing suit.
No, like a female bathing suit's like a two...
bikini?
Like the top and the bottom. Isn't
Yeah,
that
no,
the-
but he wore like a onesie.
Oh, he wore a onesie. He
Was that the
looked better in
tuck-friendly
two.
one?
I think, no, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, he's trying it on at the Target. It's hilarious.
Oh, all right, let's read some more super chats. Let's go. Brian Egan says, if Trump wins 2024, does the Libertarian Party have an opening to be successor to MAGA instead of the pendulum swinging all the way to the left again in 2028? I don't see that. No, but I just want to stress this, starting tomorrow, it's the first day of the LP National Convention in D.C. This Friday and Saturday is going to be the craziest party in politics, probably in 20 years or more. It's like the Libertarians and Republicans are all partying together. This is going to be nuts. It's
I
gonna be
can't even
fun.
imagine.
gonna be
Heroin,
wild.
hookers, everything the Libertarian Party's been fighting for.
That's right. It's too bad they didn't do it at the...
Free ammunition!
It would have been a lot better if they did it at MGM National Harbor. Because then you got a bunch of restaurants. You've got the casino. You've got the venue. But I don't
Are
know.
you going?
Yeah, I'm going to be there.
So you got to scope out whether or not it comes off right wing or left wing.
I'm just so excited. I'm expecting it being more right wing coded, but I'm just excited to see how the crowd and people react to Trump. Like that. I
Oh,
think
he's going to get booed.
that's going to be the big question.
Count the purple hair.
Well, we'll see.
A lot of people,
expect.
he's going to get booed for sure.
Well, we'll see.
But it's going to be, I think it'll be like 60-40 boos to cheers. Because even the Mises Caucus guys are critical of Trump.
Do you think he thinks he's going to get booed though?
Yes.
Because I don't know if
Yep.
he'd go if he thought he'd get booed.
He knows.
What if he
I
talks
think-
about non-booable shit?
He's going
It's
to...
like when he announces him, he'll walk out
Said
and
another
people
bad
will boo
word.
him.
He's going to get booed. He knows it, but he knows enough people there
Yeah.
are persuadable.
Yeah.
And
So it's
he's
smart
going to
move.
come in with the same energy where remember that tweet when they were like, he's falling asleep in trial and he was like, I am just resting my beautiful blue eyes. Like, if you know half the crowd doesn't like you, you're mentally
I
prepared
actually
for it.
disagree with Tim. I think he's going to get a bunch of cheers. I think everybody at the Libertarian Convention is going to be starstruck by Trump. He has this aura about him, and we'll see.
People have already
You guys should bet
complained.
money on it.
So I'm saying it's going to be a mix of cheers and boos. People have already complained.
He's already walking
about
back.
Trump being 60-40. Cheers to boos.
I'm teasing
People
you.
have already complained that Trump's coming because the attitude is, and we've had the conversation here about RFK as well. Why are we inviting people who are not libertarians to come in and dominate the convention that we are trying to build up a base of? And it's like the Mises Caucus people are like, no, it's good because Trump is going to shine a light on the Libertarian Party. It's going to bring more people. It's going to raise more money. It's going to build awareness. And it's going to make a Republican president answer questions to the Libertarians, the same as the Democrats should, but they will not do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Whoever
think-
said they shouldn't invite Trump to promote an event.
No, I think Trump,
That's a good point.
I think Trump being there does confirm that libertarians have a serious influence in American politics.
Yes.
And I think that's really the first step for them if they are trying to grow the movement. I could understand maybe wanting a libertarian to be front and center. However, getting the attention of, the notorious Trump is a big deal.
Just Me says West Virginia Tea Party took over the state government. West Virginia had been Democrat for 60 years. That's true. Shout out to Riley Moore, who I guess he's default going to win in November because he won the primary. So I think he was the first Republican treasurer in like 80 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Because it was Democrat before that. Isn't that wild? It's just so crazy. All right. Enmity says the LP in the USA was seen as a bit of a joke. Other countries have elected libertarians. Despite the Mises Caucus's efforts, the two-party system makes electing non-red or blue candidates impossible.
Yeah, I think we have a one-party system.
I think there's also something to be said about taking over the party from the inside, if that's what you're going to try to do. Like certain factions eventually cause the internal civil wars of parties and take over and remake them in their image. So might be a different strategy.
Brian Egon says America appears to be a cluster of city-states like ancient Greece, a bunch of self-congratulating tribes that are all represented by their mascots. The funny thing about Congress is that when you see someone standing up and yelling and being like, we cannot elect this law, they're not actually arguing to anybody in Congress.
Right, because they have all those conversations before they go up on C-SPAN.
And it's not even that. It's that they know that they're never convincing a Republican. They're doing it for their constituents back home.
Yeah.
They want to make a video that they can go home and be like, look at me. Look what I'm doing.
Well, I was
For
a lobbyist
social
in
media.
Tennessee at the state level, and all the committee meetings, it was hilarious because there was a private committee meeting before the committee meeting in the committee room. So just the people on the committee meeting, talking about all the legislation, how they're going to vote, why, what they're going to say. When they literally plan it out like a pregame. And then you go in and they have the official legal meeting that's required where they have the arguments and the debates and they come up to the podium and it's already like figured out. So the meeting's always ended on time at the perfect moment. And I saw that at the state level in Tennessee, and it's certainly true. Congress too.
ERB Media says, hey, Tim, can I get a shout out for my band Ego Myth? Shout out Ego Myth. Best of luck with your music. Let's go. Kwame Hayes says, America, F yeah. We agree. We all here agree with this. All right. Lurch685 says, Elad always wants to fight Israel's wars. Is that true, Elad?
I didn't feel that way.
I think the Israelis are doing fine, just fine fighting their own wars.
So do you think we should be funding Israel?
Yeah, just like we should be supporting all of our allies so they can fight for themselves. I don't think American troops should fight for Ukraine, but we should arm the Ukrainians in their war against Russia. I don't think we should be fighting wars for Israel, but I think we should assist Israel in fighting wars against common enemies.
And South Korea.
I think we should
feel like a
continue
proxy war here,
arming
team?
South Korea. Well, we also have the most troops in South Korea compared to all of these allies, but for some reason that one just goes under the radar.
Right.
For the millions of veterans who actually did fight in South Korea.
South Korea is different. I think it's very important that Korea gets all of our support. We have the THAAD missiles.
I think we have 30,000 troops in South Korea.
Yeah, it's nuts.
And that's all because of Tim, all his secret lobbying.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't care enough about K-pop. I like
Gangnam Style.
it's a good song, but Napalm Baji is way better. And anybody who says Gangnam Style is clearly not a fan of Psy.
No,
So-
I'm not a fan of Psy. But I
Napalm-
like that song.
You should hear Napalm Baji.
Almost 29,000 American troops as of May 4th, 2024. I wonder how
Because-
many we have in Japan, too.
Can we just
How many of
annex
them
South
died
Korea?
from avian flu?
Good question.
Can we? We should just annex South Korea. I mean,
We should annex Mexico. Make America Mexico again.
No,
Hashtag mama.
no. We had Mexico, and Polk gave it up.
Yeah.
What
Screw
was up
that
with
guy.
that?
No
Seriously.
wonder they elected Franklin Pierce like
We should
right
do
after.
Guam should be a state,
Even
and then
though
we
his
could just
family
start
died tragically
going
in a train
further
accident.
out into the Pacific, just adding state by
I think
state.
we need to take over Canada.
Oh
Remember-
yeah. I want Justin Trudeau to
you guys-
be like a congressman instead of a prime minister.
And think about the maple syrup reserves we capture if we
Judge
take Canada.
Napolitano would flip out. He loves maple syrup.
We need to colonize the Philippines again. Remember when those were the?
I'll do it.
Oh, I'm
We'll go
for
back.
colonization.
I
I
love
feel like
Filipino women.
it's gotten a bad rap.
I do think we've made the word colonization dirty.
Oh, it's a good
Yeah,
one.
for sure.
All right.
I like
we're
colonize.
gonna go to the members only show, everybody. Head over to timcast.com, click
fetish,
join
bro?
us, become a member if you want to watch the uncensored call-in show, which will be coming up in about a minute. It's good fun. You don't want to miss it. As a member, you're helping support the show, and you can hang out in the Discord server with like-minded individuals. They got pre-shows. They got after shows. You can follow the show at Timcast on X and Instagram, as well as rumble.com/TimcastIRL. Chase, you want to shout anything out?
I just want to remind everybody to get my book, The Rise of American Populism. You can follow me on Twitter at RealChaseGeiser and check it out. The link is in the bio. Also, make sure you check out Infowars.com, InfoWarsStore.com. I do host the Sunday Night Live show on Sunday evenings. Thank you guys all so much. I've enjoyed every moment of this, except for when we were talking about that weird state thing. This was awesome.
Chase, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. My name is Elad Eliyahu. Be sure to follow us at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to be covering Trump's rally in the South Bronx tomorrow, and then me and more at the Timcast team are going to be covering the Libertarian Convention in the next few days out in DC. So be sure to check us out on at least Instagram and Twitter. And Claire?
You're stealing all of my talking points. I have nothing to say now. No, it's been a fun show. I'm always grateful to be here. I'm really thankful for everyone who tunes in to watch. I definitely feel like you guys make all the difference. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com at Scanner News. Elad is totally right. Follow all of our work, all of our amazing team at Timcast News, Twitter, Instagram. If you want to follow me personally, I'm HannahClaire.B on Instagram. I'm HannahClaireB on Twitter. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Bye, Serge.
Your mic's off. Your mic is muted.
So great show, guys. Yeah. See you
Serge
later.
is censoring
We'll see you
himself.
all over at timcast.com in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.